that are way above any model scale that we have today, but above some certain capability threshold, I think you should need to go through a certification process for that. I think there should be external audits and safety tests. We do this for lots of other industries where we care about safety.
Elon Musk has said you started OpenAI, you both started OpenAI, because he was scared of Google. Is Google still a threat?
Google is unbelievably competent, and it seems like they're focused with an intensity Google has not seen in a while on AI.
So they're still scary?
They are a company that I don't think anyone should ever write off.
Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, we've seen all the barbs that you and Elon have been trading in public and in interviews.
Trading? I don't really.
Well, you're responding. You respond. You get asked about it by people like me, to be fair.
Mostly people like you, to be honest. Most other people ask about the technology, but that is true.
Why do you think he's so frustrated or disappointed with the direction that OpenAI has gone?
I mean, you should ask him. He can give you a better answer than I can speculate. But I really am happy to talk about this. If this is the most important topic, we can spend the rest of the time on it.
Don't worry. Not the rest of the time, just some.
I think he really cares about AI safety a lot. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where it's coming from a good place. And he just we have differences of opinion on some parts, but I think we both care about that. And he wants to make sure we have the world have the maximal chance at a good outcome.
So you're not worried he's going to call you out call you to come to some cage match in the Vegas Octagon?
I don't think I would do that. But I would go watch if he and Zuck actually did that. All
right. Well, it's supposedly happening between him and Zuck.
Crazy.
I think there will be quite an audience. Look, much has been made of the Microsoft relationship, and it's not just him, but he has said he's worried that Microsoft has more control than the leadership at OpenAI realizes, and that they could cut you off at any time. Is that true?
I mean, I think what he means is that they could break the contract and take away our access to the data center.
And a lot of money that you have access to, right?
We have money. It's the data center that they operate for us. I don't think that's a likely scenario for a bunch of reasons.
Mm-hmm. How would you characterize the relationship with Microsoft?
We think it's great. I mean, any deep, complex relationship, it's not without its challenges, but it's really great. It is by far the best major partnership I've ever been a part of. It's kind of on both sides, it was kind of a crazy thing to jump into, and it's surprising that it works this well. But if you just look at the results for both companies, we're very happy.
In 2018, that's the last time I believe we talked in person, you told me you thought AI would help us be our best, but also stop our worst impulses. What makes you confident about that? Because so many times, time and time again, it feels like technology has only amplified our worst.
Yeah, and to be clear, it will do bad things too. I don't have this only good view of it. I think realistic like other technologies. I think it's human nature to talk about the bad more than the good. And I think we can look at other technologies that have done a lot of good and plenty of harm and talk 99% about the harm and 1% about the good. And I do that too. I think that's understandable. So in 2018, that was way before the GPT series was kind of a thing, So at that point, we had some inkling it was going to go like this. We certainly didn't know exactly. But I think now what we're heading to is this personal tool that can help you in whatever way you'd like. And one of the fun parts of the trip was how diverse and broad the stories are of how people are using it to be better at whatever they want to be better at and to help them with things they want to improve. Mm-hmm. So, I think if you go talk to ChatGPT users, you'll find a lot of support for that comment from 2018. And you can also find people who are, misusing it or unhappy with it.
Mm-hmm. The reality check, though, is that you're building this on the back of human data. That is biased, that is racist, that is sexist, that is emotional, that is wrong. A lot of it is wrong.
For sure.
And how do you safeguard against that?
There was a recent study that GPT-4, the model that is released, is less biased on implicit bias tests than humans, even humans who think they've really trained themselves to be good at this. So if you look at the model that comes out of the pre-training process, that model will be quite biased and it'll reflect the internet. But reinforcement learning from human feedback, one of the techniques we use to align the models, works quite well. And if you look at the progress from model to model, even like some of our biggest critics are like, wow, they've gotten quite a lot of the bias out of the model. And so I think models like this can be a force for reducing bias in the world, not for enhancing it. Now, there's questions about what if a user wants to use the model in a very biased way? Like, how much control do you give a user? Who decides what the limits of the value system are? And that'll be a tough question for society to wrestle with. There's not an obvious one sentence, neatly buttoned up answer. But the technology, I think, has gone much further than people thought it was going to in terms of being able to align these models to behave in certain ways.
You and I have been talking going all the way back to your looped days at YC, and it's been fun to watch that journey. I think people really want to understand your incentives and don't necessarily understand your incentives. People are perplexed. I've asked a lot of people what I should ask you.
Okay.
They're perplexed that you have no equity. Can you explain that a little? Is there any financial structure whereby you do benefit if OpenAI is a big thing?
Yeah, I get why people are perplexed about this, and I have wondered if I should just take one share of equity so I never have to answer this question again. A few things. One, we're governed by a nonprofit, of which I'm a board member, and our board needs to have a majority of disinterested directors, who don't have equity in the company. So I originally didn't do it for that reason, and then I was I don't think about it until
But are there any financial incentives, at a certain benchmark?
No. I mean, I have a tiny bit of exposure via the YC investment, but it's immaterial.
So to be clear, if OpenAI, is massively profitable, you won't benefit financially.
One of the takeaways I've learned from questions like this is that this concept of having enough money is not something that is easy to get across to other people.
It's hard for people to understand. But
I have enough money. I'm gonna make way, way more from other investments that I've made in the past. If I had just taken the equity and signed the giving pledge, people would be like, that's great, that makes sense. And it would have had the same net. I'm pre-giving away the money here because it goes to the OpenAI nonprofit, and I trust the OpenAI nonprofit to do a good thing with it. But I have enough money. What I want more of is an interesting life, impact, access to be in the room for interesting conversations. So I still get a lot of selfish benefit from this. What else am I going to do with my time? This is really great. I cannot imagine a more interesting life than this one, and a more interesting thing to work on. So I get a ton of benefit, but yes, somehow this idea of having enough money just doesn't compute for people.
So if it's not about money, is it about power? Is it about control?
I want to make my contribution back to human technological progress. I get to benefit from all of this stuff that people did before. I get to use this iPhone that I still marvel at every day, all of the work that had to go into that in the human tech tree. And those people, I don't know who they are. I'm very grateful to them. They knew they were never going to get recognition from me personally, but they also wanted to do something to contribute. And so do I, and I can't imagine better compensation than that feeling. It would be maybe weird if I had not already made a bunch of money and again plan to make way more from other investments, but I just don't think about it.
Yeah.
I think this will be I think this will be the most important step yet that humanity has to get through with technology, and I really care about that.
What is one question that you really wish
I
people
want to hear
like
about
me asked
Elon
you?
and equity and the personal drama of the day.
But seriously, I understand you are getting a lot of those questions.
No, I'm happy to talk about it. I'm always excited to just talk about what can happen in the coming few years and few decades with the technology.
So what are we all going to do when we have nothing to do?
I mean, talk about Elon and Zuck cage fighting, I guess.
Like, seriously.
I don't know. No, I don't think we ever run out of things to do. I think it's like deeply in our nature to want to create, to want to be useful, to want to like feel the fulfillment of doing something that matters. And if you talk to people from thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago even, the work that we do now would have seemed, unimaginable at best and probably like trivial. This is like not directly necessary for our survival in the sense of like creating food or whatever. And this shift happens with every technological revolution, every time we worry about what people are going to do on the other side, and every time we find things. And I suspect not only will this time not be an exception to that, the things we find will be better and more interesting and more impactful than ever before. Like, there are a lot of people that talk about AI as like the last technological revolution. I suspect that, from the other side, it'll look like the first. Like the other stuff will be so small in comparison. I think the whole thing of like technological revolutions is sort of dumb because my understanding has always been it's just one long continuous one. But it is this continuing exponential. And so what will be enabled, and the stuff we can't even imagine on the other side, we will have way too much to do. If you want to just sit around and do nothing, that'll be fine too.
All right. Bonbons and beaches in my future.
If that's what I don't think that's what you'll turn out to want. But if you do, great.
You talked about AIs designing other AIs on the tour. Can you play that out for us and the implications of that?
Yeah, I mean, this is like the classic sci-fi idea that, at some point, these systems can help progress themselves, can discover better architectures, can help write their own code. I think we're a ways away from that, but it is worth paying attention to.
Yeah. China and Russia, you didn't go there on your trip.
I did speak. I gave the keynote at the Chinese conference.
You did speak virtually.
Yeah.
Where do you think they are on AI, and should we be worried?
I don't really know. I'd love to have better information on that. I don't have a great sense.
Does it concern you that we don't know?
Yeah, I mean, again, like any imperfect information always is a little concerning. So I'd love to have a better sense. But, I'm like optimistic that we can find some sort of collaborative thing. And I think this thing that often gets said in the US, which is like, it's impossible to cooperate with China, it's just totally off the table, is asserted as fact, and like people are trying to will it into existence, but it's like not clear to me it's true. In fact, I suspect it's not. It will be hard.
Right. Look, I'm so grateful that you've been around the world talking about this. I'm so grateful that you're with us today. I think even you would acknowledge you have an incredible amount of power at this moment in time. Why should we trust you?
You shouldn't. Like, I don't, as you know me for a long time, public talking, like I'd rather be in the office working. But I think at this moment in time, like people deserve basically as much time asking questions as they want, and I'm trying to show up and do it. But more to that, like no one person should be trusted here. I don't have super voting shares. Like I don't want them. The board can fire me. I think that's important. I think the board over time needs to get like democratized to all of humanity. There's many ways that could be implemented. But the reason for our structure and the reason it's so weird, and one of the consequences of that weirdness was me ending up with no equity, is we think this technology, the benefits, the access to it, the governance of it, belongs to humanity as a whole. You should if this really works, it's like quite a powerful technology, and you should not trust one company and certainly not one person with it.
So why should we trust OpenAI? Are you saying we shouldn't?
No, I think you should trust OpenAI, but only if OpenAI is doing these sorts of things. Like if we're years down the road and have not sort of figured out how to start democratizing control, then I think you shouldn't. But if this is like, if we figure out some sort of new structure where OpenAI is like governed by humanity, and that can happen in many ways, including like the alignment data set we pick rather than us picking it. We find a way to like get it from humanity as a whole. That could mean like actual board control. There's many ways that could be implemented, and We're talking to a lot of people about what that could look like. But if we don't do that, I don't think like just trust us is good enough.
Well, thank you for explaining why we should maybe consider trusting you. You have a plane to catch. We're so grateful for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much.
For sure.
All right. Thank you. Okay, now we are going to follow that with the co-founders of Inflection AI, Reid Hoffman and Mustafa Suleyman, as well as my colleague, Brad Stone.
All right. Well, Mustafa Suleyman, Reid Hoffman, thank you guys for joining us. Mustafa, you are a co-founder of DeepMind, now a division of Google. You're the author of a forthcoming book, The Coming Wave. Reid, legendary venture capitalist. You're an early investor in OpenAI. Also an author of a book called Impromptu. The books are available for everyone. Thank you. So thank you both.
Which you wrote with AI, right?
Yes, the Impromptu, first book on AI, co-written with an AI.
Yes, ChatGPT-4 will be doing a signing.
Good. All you have to do is go to the web prompt.
Yeah. And you're the co-founders of a company called Inflection AI. Guys, it's raining chatbots these days from OpenAI, well-funded startups, all the big tech companies. So tell us, Mustafa, maybe you start. What is the play here with Inflection AI?
So I think this is unquestionably going to be the most radical transformation of our lifetimes. I mean, there are going to be AIs for all sorts of things, for businesses, for brands, for digital influencers. Our belief is that everyone is also going to have a personal AI, one that is aligned to your interests, on your team, in your corner, gets to know you, and really forms a trusted relationship with you over time. It'll be like a confidant, a consigliere, there for you when you need to make tough decisions, but also a chief of staff, scheduling, organizing, prioritizing, booking. Your AI is really going to be your digital representative, negotiating on your behalf, interacting with other sales AIs that are trying to, encourage you to buy something and helping you to, get a great deal.
And like, for example, it's the whole set of things. So like, for example, one of the things I just found out yesterday is one of our team members at Greylock actually, in fact, is using Pi for parenting advice.
Oh, cool.
Right, which is really awesome. And that's the kind of thing where you're like, great.
But Reid, why is this an opportunity for a startup? Isn't a Microsoft or a Google Bard just a little closer to the customer and in a better position to offer that personal digital assistant?
Well, part of obviously I am on the board of Microsoft and, was on the board of OpenAI. And part of the thing is, what I love about startups is that you have a unique vision where you're unfettered by the other aspects of your business and you're building it. So part of the idea that Mustafa and the entire Inflection team kind of came up with, and I have a little bit of fingerprints here too, is that IQ is not the only thing that matters here. EQ matters as well. And so how do you have this personal intelligence, Pi, be helpful to you? Obviously very high-end, IQ, but also EQ. And that was one of the reasons I used the parenting example, because obviously there's a question of how you do it, but it's also how you connect with people, what you do in order to amplify that. And I think that's one of the things that the Inflection folks are doing better than everyone else.
So can we talk about the EQ thing? Because I asked Pi what we should ask you. Its questions were fine. And then I was like, are you going to tell them that we had this conversation? And it responded, haha, I'm just a computer program. I can't tell anyone anything, but I assure you our conversations are confidential. I do think it's pretty cool that we're having this meta conversation about your interview with my creators! Exclamation point. And it was actually the personality that shocked me. Can you explain how you designed that?
I mean, we've deliberately designed it to be patient, curious, kind. One of the things that first struck us like a year and a half ago when we started working on this is like, what makes for great conversation? When do you feel that sense of flow and that sense of energy and connection with another person? And I think most of the time it's when you feel heard and understood, you've received a little bit of affirmation, but it's not completely sycophantic, right? It doesn't just agree with you at every moment. It can be a little bit challenging. It has boundaries, so you can push it on certain topics and it'll take a position, and that's really healthy. But also it's just curious. I think many people are excited by the idea, especially the users that we have, of someone asking them lots of questions about the topic that they're interested in. We don't always have someone in our lives who is as knowledgeable and as passionate about our favorite topics as we might like. And so that's where Pi comes in, because it's super knowledgeable and engaging.
So it sounds like a competitor to ChatGPT. Is it a competitor to ChatGPT? And how does that make sense if you're also an investor in OpenAI?
Well, so I think there's going to be a number of agents. I don't think there's going to be one agent to rule them all, a ring in Mordor.
But is ChatGPT going to rule most of us?
No, I don't think so. I think that, it's partially, it's like, same reason we talk to different people for different aspects of our lives, right? So, this person we talk to about our passion about snowboarding, this person we talk to about what's going on in the country, this person we talk to, like we have a pantheon. Same thing, we'll have a pantheon of different kinds of AI. One will go, you ask ChatGPT, how do you, comfort a friend who's lost a treasured pet, and it says, here are 5 possible ways you might do that. You ask Pi, and it'll say, oh, that sounds like it's really hard for you and your friend. You know your friend well, what would count as being present there for your friend? And it still has the IQ, it has the 5 reasons, but it goes through that style of going through it. And I think these are different interaction experiences, and the question is, which one do you want this minute? Which one do you want more in your life? That kind of thing. And part of the design of Pi is, how do we help you be the best you? Right, like that doesn't mean by being sycophantic, for example. That's the question of, ask you questions about, well, what do you think about this? And how do you go through it, and help you navigate your life by being helpful in that way.
So Sam Altman was just on stage talking, as he sometimes does, about the theoretical dangers of AGI and ChatGPT-9. And I'm just curious if you guys think generally that's a discussion worth having, and where you each are on this spectrum of existential dangers from AI.
Well, let's start with the fact that one of the things that I think is dangerous about the existential discussion is it blinds us from some of the nearer things, which is AI is amplification intelligence, as per the Impromptu book, and so it amplifies human beings. And so we see a bunch of good things with human beings, AI tutors, AI doctors, a bunch of other things. There's also bad human beings. And so what to do about bad human beings doing, with AI is also part of the portfolio mix of how you shape this technology. And it's one of the reasons why Mustafa's book, The Coming Wave, I highly recommend. And I will hand the next part of the answer over to you.
And wait, let me frame it though, Mustafa. Sam's probably left the building by now. So
you can say anything
frankly,
you want.
like, where do you kind of disagree with some of the alarmism notes that he has sounded?
Look, I think it's easy to speculate around what a GPT-9 might look like. 6 more orders of magnitude of compute would be eye-watering, and I'm absolutely with those concerns around existential risk. But if you play that out, that is many, many years, and it is, unclear what actually happens at that scale. What's much more clear, and what a lot of the themes I explore in the new book, is that in the near term, we're about to empower many, many people, if not ultimately everybody, with access to the ability to amplify their existing power, right? This is not just a knowledge engine, but in time, it'll allow you to take actions, right? You'll be able to make recommendations, buy things, book things, and that's going to get smaller and cheaper and therefore proliferate far and wide. That is going to cause a dramatic instability and potentially a threat to the nation state, because anyone who has an agenda or is trying to sort of push a political outcome is suddenly going to see the barrier to entry to that kind of scaled impact lowered. And so there's going to be a real question around how states kind of manage that distribution of power. And I think there'll be a tendency to lunge towards, slightly more authoritarian, more surveillance-based mechanisms to prevent that proliferation, which would both be bad for innovation and obviously dystopian from a political governance perspective.
So hang on, and Sam and I were talking backstage as well, and he's much more confident that AI will lead us to a more equal world than an unequal world. Are you saying that there's a better chance of economic dislocation and social dislocation as a result of this technology?
So both are likely to be true, actually, which is a little bit surprising. But if you look back over the last 50 years, the transistor, the last wave, which enabled the personal computer, has clearly made us in many ways more equal. Whether you're a billionaire or you earn $20,000 a year, we all get access to the same cutting-edge hardware. The smartphone and the laptop is broadly at the cutting edge, and everyone else will catch up over the next 5 to 10 years. We're on the same trajectory with respect to access to intelligence, and that is an unbelievable idea. Over the next decade, hundreds of millions of people and then billions of people will get access to the same expert doctor, the same expert educator, the same tool for scheduling, prioritizing, organizing your life. That is going to be the most meritocratic moment in the history of our species, for sure. It is a question around how individuals and groups and organizations use that power, right? Because clearly we all have conflicting agendas and priorities and goals, and that's basically where I think that we end up with significant disruption.
Okay, Reed, but that's the glass half full. I mean, what is the potential threat to the millions of coders, of customer service representatives, the job dislocation, the people who are serving jobs whose functions can be easily replaced by AI?
Your LinkedIn hat on, too.
The closest metaphor that I've come to use to describe this moment is it's a steam engine of the mind. If you look at the former steam engine, current steam engine, although obviously majorly amplified, industrial revolution gave us superpower of muscles, superpower of transport, superpower of construction, all these things. Now we're going to have superpowers of the mind. Now, there's a whole bunch of very positive things that come out of that. I mean, all of the things we have come of the increase in wealth that allows medicine, general education, everything else comes out of the Industrial Revolution. I think the same thing will be coming out of the steam engine of the mind. Now, but the transition is going to be difficult. The transition is going to be, okay, well, customer service jobs are going to change a whole lot. Now, engineers, I think, look, if you roughly kind of go through a company and you go, well, we 10x each function, you say you 10x salespeople. Great. Still want to hire more salespeople, want more sales. You go 10x marketing people. It's like, okay, maybe the marketing function will change some, so less order entry, more thinking about it, but you're still in a business competitive ecosystem. You don't want to stop marketing or not be doing it. When you get to customer service, you get more replacement. But here's part of the thing part of the reason why I did the book Impromptu and I'm trying to orient people is like, okay, so customer service people, there's going to be a transition. Well, AI can help with that. You can build AIs that help figure out other kinds of work and jobs, that can help you find them, that can help you learn them, that can help you do them. And so that's the thing that we as a society need to be doing. So it's like less like how do we slow down AI, how do we shape it to help the broad swath of humanity in this transition? Mm-hmm. That's where I'm trying to get the dialogue and discussion to.
Mustafa, we were just talking to Sam about Google and whether or not it's still scary, and he's like, yeah, they're still formidable. You quit DeepMind and Google AI, and obviously a lot of people have left Google. Is there something wrong at Google or some sort of innovator's dilemma there that will prevent it from truly succeeding on generative AI because it undermines its own business model?
Look, fundamentally, AI stands in tension with Google's existing business model. It's very hard to eat yourself from within and adapt and respond to the coming wave. So for a while, Google was just idling. I was there. On Lambda, we had ChatGPT before ChatGPT. It was just like a remarkable feeling internally, playing with this incredible tool and not really being able to get it out into products. It took, the launch of ChatGPT to kind of threaten Google and really shake everything up. And, Google's a very formidable and, organization full of super smart people. So I'm sure they'll be just fine, but I can understand why they're stuck, because nobody wants a personal AI in your pocket that is actually funded by ads, right? You don't want a salesman in your pocket that is trying to persuade you to go and buy more or do X, Y, Z. You need fiduciary alignment, right? Your AI has to be on your team, and that means ultimately you have to pay for it. And if somebody else is paying for it, you have to ask yourself, what are they trying to persuade you of? Are they trying to influence you in some way? And I think people are alive to that now, and that's a real challenge for Google because it's very unclear how they're going to manage this transition.
So we asked Sam if Google scares him. Does OpenAI scare you? Mustafa first, then you.
So no.
No, it definitely doesn't. I mean, actually, this morning, we've announced our new large language model called Inflection 1, and we set out to build a model that was fast enough and more capable than every other model on the market for our compute class. So we're very proud that, a year on from our launch, we're now better than Llama, ChatGPT, Palm 540, Chinchilla, all of the other models of our size. And that's super important because it powers Pi, and ultimately it will be available as a conversational API. So you can obviously play with it at pi.ai now. And I think that demonstrates that with a team of 35 people, in a pretty short order, we're able to exceed the cutting edge and now build an absolute best-in-class AI, which is very exciting. And obviously, we've also managed to do that because we've been able to gather a huge amount of capital and some great investors and train. In fact, what we now have is the largest operational cluster in the world of H100s, NVIDIA's latest chip. And that's a huge advantage.
Okay.
And one of the things, because I was listening to your conversation with Sam, and it's obviously an awkward question when you ask him. It's like, well, should we trust you? Because it's like, yes, trust me. It's like, well, that's weird. Because if
He
someone
actually
says,
said, no, you shouldn't.
yes.
I was like,
But
what?
if someone says, yes, trust me, you're like, well, wait a minute. But look, the OpenAI people are really great people. I think it's governed by a 501c3. There's frequently a bunch of FUD social media stuff that kind of obscures that. I have spent a number of years on the board and in team. I still work with them and help them. They are fully paying attention to every serious question. I mean, like, for example, Sam went and spent a month. It's crazy, you're doing a startup. He spent a month doing a world tour, talking to people, say, look, I'm here, you can talk to me about your concerns. I want to make sure it's good for humanity. I don't just care about this kind of US San Francisco tech scene. I care about what its impact on humanity is. And so I have come here to talk to you. So that kind of, like, I'm engaged in conversation, I care about this, is the kind of reason, in addition to a 501c3, emission structure, and everything else. And so, no, I'm delighted with Open.
I don't see how he's getting any work done with all these public appearances, but I want to change gears quickly. We're going to throw some Twitter polls up on the screen today, and we asked Twitter users where the greatest advancements in AI would come from. We'll see the results, but I want to ask about, maybe Reed, starting with you, the US-China policy of divestment. Can we reasonably hope that doing that will maybe prolong America's advantage in AI? Is it a smart strategy?
I don't think divestment is a smart strategy. I think staying connected is better for both the US and China and the world. I think competition is very good. I think the fact that there's various ways that we in the US and the West Coast have a AI lead, I think that's a great thing for kind of the values, the ecosystem, the kind of the great world order that the US should be very proud of in the last 70 years. Like, there's lots of things to be critical of too, of course, but like, as a really peaceful time, trying to make it business and interconnection is a really good thing, and I'm a very strong believer and proponent of that. But I think divestment's not the end.
Mustafa, you write in the book that China has an explicit national strategy to be the AI leader by 2030. So do you agree with Reed that withdrawal, divestment is a smart strategy?
I mean, China is already ahead of its own schedule. I mean, it's publishing significantly more papers on AI than we are collectively in the rest of the world. So, I do think that our export controls were effectively a declaration of economic war on China. They were very firm and very aggressive. And I think it sets us out on a hyper-adversarial footing. They have a huge number of levers too. We should expect them to use them against us pretty soon, unfortunately.
So we talked a lot about regulation with Sam, and obviously President Biden was just in town here this week talking about AI. He met with, the president and Sundar and Satya in DC. What is the prospect for real government oversight that protects users, protects the economy, and our political process?
So I think the good news is that the administration is taking a very let's learn how to be smart about this. Let's assemble a set of thoughtful people from industry. Yesterday, assembling a thoughtful people from outside of industry, academia, other kinds of places we're doing it, and let's learn about it. I think they have a number of good people tasked with this. And so I'm optimistic in that. But on the other hand, of course, a little bit like your interview with Sam, regulatory things is something that's very easy to get wrong. So you need to be cautious about how you do it. You want it to be having a net positive impact, not, for example, regulatory capture, not a bunch of other things. And so I think you have to be careful about how you do it.
I think it's worth adding that this time last year, almost no world leaders were talking about AI. I don't think there has ever been a technology trajectory in history that has gone from zero recognition to almost universal recognition. And that's a good thing. And I think it's in part because sort of we collectively in industry have been trying to advocate and say, like, this is really serious, we should pay attention and invite the conversation wherever it ends up with respect to regulating existential risk or more near-term threats.
Okay, I think we have to leave it there. Mustafa, Reed, thank you guys for joining us.
Great to see you guys.
Thanks a lot. Great to see you.
Okay, I'd now like to welcome to the stage Adam Selipsky, the CEO of AWS. Good to see you, Adam.
Hi, how are you?
It's been a while.
Yes, indeed.
I first went to meet Adam at Tableau, his previous company, for my Amazon book, and I came away thinking, boy, this guy's tough. He's still like an Amazonian at heart, and now here you are back at Amazon. Well, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's great to see everybody.
It strikes me, this morning we've talked about OpenAI, big investment from Microsoft running on Azure. We've talked about Google Bard, obviously, Inflection AI, Mustafa's company, also running on Azure. So I guess, my first question is this generative AI surprise, this revolution, does it buttress AWS's cloud leadership position, or does it threaten it?
Well, I think if we, there's no birthright here, but if we do our job right, I think it should buttress our existing leadership position in the cloud. I mean, as you implied today, we are by far the most broadly adopted cloud in the world with the broadest set of capabilities. And I think that generative AI is both an incredibly explosive and transformative set of technologies in and of itself, and it's fully dependent on the cloud to be successful. Right. So if you look at the massive amount of compute that's required, never mind any other IT-related stuff, but just the massive amount of compute required, that's going to happen really predominantly in the cloud. And companies are going to want to view generative AI as part of an entire data strategy and data platform. And you're going to want to do your generative AI, where you've got your data. And you're also going to want the same bulletproof enterprise security, privacy that you expect from any other cloud service. And because so many customers, and certainly more than on any other cloud, have that data on AWS, use AWS for security and operational excellence, I think that they're going to justifiably demand that AWS have a full, powerful suite of generative AI services. Okay, but do you need a popular LLM or an exclusive partner running on AWS, as it does seem like Microsoft and Google have? I mean, I guess I'm asking, who's your horse in the race right now? Right, well, I think, with all due respect, I think that's the wrong question. It would be like in 1997, when the internet's happening and everything's kind of going nuts around us, you and I sitting around saying, who's the internet company going to be? I mean, it kind of seems like a silly question, right? And by the way, the leading search company then was Alta Vista. And I guarantee you my kids have never heard of Alta Vista. So it's not, okay, we're who's ahead, which runner is ahead in the race after 3 steps, because it's a 10K race. What everybody needs now is experimentation. They need choice. They need democratization of generative AI. And just like AWS was founded to democratize IT, we aim to democratize generative AI. So we're operating at all layers of the stack. We've had our own custom chip program for a decade now, way longer than anybody else. And we have not 1, but 2 families of chips custom designed for machine learning. Trainium for training and Inferentia for running inference. And so those are for people who are going to build models, train models. Then most of our customers will interact with Amazon Bedrock, which is a managed service for accessing, deploying, managing models. And here's where the choice comes in. So we are going to have our own models, our own LLMs. So Amazon models, LLMs, have been running in production inside of Amazon for a long time now. Parts of our retail search are powered by LLMs. A lot of Alexa's voice responses are LLM powered. And right now we're in the process of taking those LLMs, we're making them bigger, we're externalizing them, and later this year, those will be exposed for everybody to use.
And is that Titan?
The Titan brand,
Okay.
exactly.
Well, let me ask you, so
But that's just one model, one set of models, I should say. We're also exposing Anthropic inside of Bedrock, Stability AI, AI 21, and I think a lot of others over time, because nobody knows. Anybody who knows which model is going to be the winner is asking the wrong question. People need to experiment, and we want to provide that choice.
Okay, so pretend you're talking to a customer now. Make the argument, why should they use Titan or one of these other LLMs you're exposing rather than GPT-4, which now does seem to have a significant leadership position?
Yeah. Well, I don't know which model they should use. It depends who they are, and it depends what their application is. And some of them probably will want to use GPT. And some of them will want to use Titan, and some of them will want to use Anthropic. And I think it's preposterous to me to think that one model or one company is going to be the solution for every application and every company out there. So we're already seeing this heterogeneity. So we're seeing an explosion of interest in Bedrock and Amazon's generative AI capabilities. Just this morning, Omnicom, one of the largest advertising communications firms in the world, announced they're working with AWS using Bedrock, as well as our custom chips inside of our compute capacity to do generative AI going forward. Earlier this week, BBVA, one of the largest financial services firms in the world, announced they're working with Amazon on generative AI, with Bedrock. And it's that choice combined with the enterprise security and privacy, which I think are so fundamental.
I can humbly admit, as a journalist covering tech for way too long, that in the fall I was surprised by not only the quality of ChatGPT, but the customer response to this new wave of technology. Were you surprised?
Well, I think that, folks working in this area in AI have known about large language models for a long time. And very few companies have more experience with AI than Amazon. 1998, personalization on the Amazon website, that was AI.
Okay, still.
Called AI. SageMaker, 2017, now used by over 100,000 AWS customers. Most machine learning in the cloud, any cloud, happens on SageMaker. So we have a lot of experience. We have a lot of people working on LLMs. I think the whole world was surprised that when 3.5 came out, it was such a dramatic improvement in responses. Not perfect by any means, but a dramatic improvement in responses over 3.0. So I think that was the surprise, but not the overall arc. But the good news for our customers is that we have deep expertise in AI. I've been working on different forms of it for a long time, and are now pouring enormous resources into the generative part of AI.
Okay, I'll give this up after this, I promise. But would you concede that Amazon's playing a little bit from behind right now?
No, I really don't think so. Again, it's the race analogy of are we really going to have a conversation about 3 steps into a 10K race? Who's in what position? It's about the long term. Amazon has always taken a much more long-term view of the world than almost any other company. I think the key is we're building at multiple layers of the stack because we understand that's what customers need. We're also building applications on top of these models. So we've released Code Whisperer, which is a coding companion on top of the Amazon LLMs. And that's, you type in words, it gives you back code. In internal tests, kind of coding challenges, developers finish their task on average 57% faster than those not using Code Whisperer. Plus, it's very secure, private, tells you what open source you're using and what licensing restrictions there might be on it, which not every other solution out there does. So I think we're very confident. If you look at the only thing which ought to give us confidence is customer response. I mentioned Omnicom, I mentioned BBVA this week. Old Mutual, which is one of the largest financial services companies in Africa, is going all in on AWS and using us for generative AI. And really exciting developments to come. We're talking to one company who has millions of lines of mainframe code. And they're talking to us about moving over these really gnarly mainframe applications and millions of lines of code using generative AI from AWS. So I think it's this consumer application, this chat application, which is so easy for folks to understand because they can say, give me a haiku about farm machinery, and it does it.
That's the key,
cool.
the haikus.
It's cool, but what I think folks in this room and watching online understand is that there is a full suite of enterprise and company and organizational applications, and there's going to be huge needs there. And so we're going to be focused on customer service and on coding and on drug discovery and on wealth management, providing better solutions for customers, and a full suite of applications across every industry. And I think we're very well positioned there.
And do you feel like you have or are close to having a GPT-4 quality model running on AWS?
All of the tests that we've done, as well as more and more customers who are in the existing current preview of Bedrock, have been very impressed with the quality of our models. And of course, again, it's not just about our models. We're going to be proud of our models, I predict, but Anthropic does an amazing job, and they're right up there in quality with any model in the world. Stability AI, big leader for generating for models generating images. So collectively, I think these models will provide absolutely the best destination, all with a consistent API set, consistent AWS security, consistent identity system, all in a private, isolated, virtual private cloud. None of this, hey, here's an application, and now you have to have a bunch of Fortune 500 CIOs ban it from their companies, which is what's happened. From day one, it's always going to be AWS class security.
Okay, I want to put a slide up showing a Bloomberg Intelligence estimate on projected generative AI revenues over the next, I think it's maybe 7 or 8 years.
I have not seen
and
that.
who knows what, about the numbers that far out, but it's up and to the right. And I just can imagine a lot of financial types who are out there, looking at Amazon's numbers and wondering how much of a sales tailwind this will be for AWS. So what can you tell us about, you mentioned it's so computationally intensive, what you see the impact being for AWS?
Well, it's really early, so I think prognostication is fun and probably important at the end of the day, but I think it's also important to be humble and to be nimble, anything ending in "ul," and to understand that we're going to have to all adjust rapidly. But that being said, I think that, well, look, I don't think any of the fundamentals about cloud computing have changed, and probably, who knows, call it 10% of IT has moved to the cloud. So we're still very, very early. And whether you're talking about any application, there's still massive runway for things to move to the cloud, and we firmly believe that they will. On top of that, I think that generative AI is going to be the next kind of massive increase in workloads, moving to the cloud, or in many cases happening for the first time and happening in the cloud. And so I do think that it should be a significant tailwind for cloud providers, and particularly for AWS, given our leadership position. Obviously, we need to come out with the capabilities, the services that justify people using us for that purpose. But I think if we do a good job of listening to customers, it should provide significant demand for years to come. I mean, the computational requirements are so intense. And one thing which also I think works in favor of AWS is that a lot of people are asking about, hey, what about the energy consumption? What about sustainability?
And you run those efforts inside Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, I also run sustainability. It's kind of the other thing I do inside of Amazon. And we as a company, and I personally, care a lot about sustainability. And people say, well, is this generative AI, massive compute, is that incompatible?
Yeah, are we going
with
backwards?
Being sustainable? Well, no, we're not, because number one, these workloads, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. So generative AI is going to happen. So let's make it happen in a highly energy efficient and sustainable way. So if you look at our custom chips that we design, if you take Graviton, for example, which is our oldest chip family, Graviton is 60% more energy efficient than equivalent x86-based compute capacity. And if you look at an enterprise just in general, never mind generative AI, just moving from their own data centers to the cloud, to AWS, there was a study done showing that AWS is 3.6 times more energy efficient than the average enterprise data center in the United States. So we are the sustainable place. We're doing it through a whole series of technological improvements, plus a commitment, which we're 85% of the way there already, to be 100% renewable energy by 2025, which is just around the corner.
Right. You guys had another commitment called Shipment Zero, which was a net carbon zero commitment by 2030, which you guys, I guess, maybe scrapped or you took off the website. As a longtime Amazon watcher, my heart just kind of sank because you guys have been so prominent about these goals. I guess the question is, like, have these commitments become harder to meet than they were to make?
Well, I think your heart should be sinking at the state of global warming, the state of the planet.
Well, it certainly is.
Because mine is. And we should all be concerned about that. But I think your heart should be singing at the leadership position that Amazon is trying to establish and at the improvements we're trying to make and at the very public goals we've set.
So why did you remove that particular commitment?
So, well, because it's subsumed really in a much broader, bolder commitment. We made a very public pledge to be net zero carbon across all of Amazon, not just AWS, all of Amazon by 2040, which is 10 years ahead of the Paris Accords. Now, for a technology company like AWS, I won't say it's easy, but it's doable. So you'll hear that from other tech companies. For a big retailer with air freight and inbound transportation and stores and packaging, it is actually really, really hard. And we will be the first to say, we don't know how we're going to get there in all dimensions. I can tell you how we're going to get there in renewable energy. I can't tell you how we're going to get there in all elements of transportation and packaging and buildings. But we're an innovative company. We take bold long-term bets. And we made this pledge publicly, not privately, in order to, number one, have a forcing function for ourselves, because it's not easy, and also because we want to inspire other organizations, governments, companies to join us. We have over 400 signatories now of the Climate Pledge that's growing every month. And it's not a competition against other organizations. It's competition against the thermometer. And frankly, I want other people to out-innovate us. I want to be beaten, if you will, in the race to become sustainable. And hopefully we can be inspired by things that other people are doing. So, of course, we adjust our goals over time, but the thing I would focus on is this audacious goal to be net zero carbon by 2040.
And that's a line in the sand. I mean, even as things like generative AI take more and more computational resources, even as you get more efficient with compute, that's a commitment that you can hold firm on, even if you don't know how you're going to get there?
We have made a public pledge, and we intend on getting there. But there are lots of other areas of progress we're making in the interim. So, for example, if you take packaging for the retail business, the average packaging per shipment has decreased by 38% since 2015. Which is another example of it can be sustainable and good for our business. It's lower cost for us, and it's much more sustainable for the planet. And anytime you create a win-win like that, it just works for everybody and becomes a really sustainable business proposition.
Let's get back to AI, and let me ask you about Alexa. I know it's slightly out of your purview, but Alexa runs in your servers. Can Alexa be a generative AI play? Should it be?
Alexa is already, as I mentioned, already powered in large part by LLMs that Amazon built and have been in production for a while now. And I think that she's only going to get smarter and better and more personalized as the LLM technology expands and improves.
It feels to me, as a longtime user, and my wife who's here knows I populated our house with them at one point, but today it feels, as does Siri, frankly, a step behind. Would you agree with that?
No, I think that Alexa, well, I use Alexa in my house. I mean, I guess we all have different strokes for different folks, and we love Alexa. And I like to think she loves us. Although if you ask her that, she won't actually tell you yes. I think Alexa's been getting better and better, more skills, better skills, more understanding of you and your likes and dislikes and your habits. And I think that the rapid improvements that we're making in generative AI are truly going to continue to transform Alexa into a truly personalized assistant. And we do want Alexa to be an absolutely indispensable, best in the world personal assistant to you. And I think that we got a lot of work to do, I'll leave it to the Alexa folks to fill in all of those blanks over time, but we're actually very confident in that plan and very optimistic about Alexa being able to fulfill that role in people's lives that I think they're really going to love.
I want to get to two more in the 2 minutes we have left. Your boss and predecessor, Andy Jassy, has been kind of cutting some of the big bets at Amazon, but one that he hasn't cut is the satellite plan Kuiper. And I just wonder, what you see as the opportunity considering a rival system, Starlink from Tesla. It does seem to be, operational and quite far ahead.
Well, we're very optimistic about Kuiper. There's huge interest from governments, from enterprises, from lots of other organizations. Billions of people around the world are underserved for internet. And Kuiper really aims to democratize that. There's a theme here. To democratize that and provide great internet service to so many billions of underserved people. In addition, whether it's automobile companies, telecommunications companies, lots of other enterprises who are AWS customers, governments, they want, especially from remote locations, to be able to backhaul information up to Kuiper, back into the AWS cloud. And so I think as we launch our first satellites,
which is when? Coming months?
Later this year, and then really ramping up in 2024 and 2025 is my understanding. And but then being in service in that time frame initially, and being able to deliver that for AWS customers is huge. Before we go, I do just want to remind folks that just today, this morning, AWS has launched its $100 million Generative AI Innovation Center, where we're going to be going out to all those customers around the world, enterprises with expertise, free AWS expertise, solutions architects, engineers, strategists, and working with them one-on-one to envision, design, and then actually implement AI, generative AI capabilities, not talk, but actual applications.
So that's discounts for new companies, or?
Yeah, we're just gonna bring our internal AWS experts, free of charge to a whole bunch of AWS customers, focusing on folks with significant AWS presence, and go help them turbocharge their efforts to get real with generative AI, get beyond the talk.
All right, last one in negative 10 seconds, so I guess it's got to be a quick one. You and Andy are both in the same situation. You're the guy after the guy, the founder whose name was synonymous with the early stage of legendary growth. So what do you want Adam's AWS legacy to be?
I don't really think of it in personal terms, to be honest with you. So I don't have a canned answer, but I will say that I would love it if I could be known to really help drive a business that is constantly, no matter how big it gets, no matter how far flung it gets, puts customers at the very center of what we're doing. Always puts customers' interests before anybody else's interests. Yet at the same time is an empathetic, equitable, fun, and innovative place for employees to work.
All right, Adam Slupski, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Qualcomm President and CEO Cristiano Amon with Bloomberg's Ed Ludlow.
Good morning, everybody. You joined Qualcomm as an engineer in 1995. I bring that up for two reasons. One, it was your birthday yesterday. Belatedly happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I won't date you, but you've also seen the arc of technological development. We know Qualcomm as as the largest maker of smartphone processors, the brains inside the handsets that are all pointing at you right now, taking photos. The question, is Qualcomm an AI company?
Look, this is a great question to ask. And, it's incredible to see all of the development you see right now on AI. Here's how I answer that question. Actually, it's very simple. If you think about the AI, when you think about semiconductors, it's really accelerating computing, right? You do a lot of computation. And what you can do with those large language models, large models for images and video. So if you think about the history of computing, computing starts in the cloud and it gets scale at the edge. I think that's what happens with CPUs. That's what happens with all other form of computing, and I think the smartphone is a great example of that. If you look, the largest computing platform ever developed is the smartphone right now. It's the largest development platform for mankind. And what is good about the smartphone, it's a device that is with you all the time. So if AI becomes pervasive, which we believe it will become pervasive, especially when you look about how those large models, they are very natural, how you can converse with them, they have contextual information and all of those things. That's gonna happen at the edge. So that's how you should think about Qualcomm. If AI is gonna get scale, you're gonna see it running on Qualcomm Snapdragon devices, whether it's in your phone, in your car, in your PC, and into other machines. And I think that's a great opportunity for us.
If the future is to democratize access to artificial intelligence tools, generative AI tools, and Qualcomm's going to make that happen, why are you not getting like Jensen Huang level love, Cristiano?
Look, I think I think what's happening right now, and by the way, it's great for the semiconductor industry, for anybody that has been on the forefront of computing. You know, Qualcomm, it's probably used to be well known as a communication company, but actually, if you look at what we do right now, it's more of a connected processor company than communication. And as those models started to become very popular, they're going to be running at the edge, and I expect that AI becomes an option on Qualcomm right now. And look, and I'll give you an example. I saw something that Adam said, I think in the prior conversation, when he said something about in 1997, if you try to guess who are the winners and losers on the internet, it would be probably a very wild guess. I think what we see today is this generative AI opportunity is huge. We don't know yet all of the different applications that are going to come up. We're seeing that just within the past 6 months is a revolution, the number of companies coming with use cases. And those use cases are going to happen on devices. And I think that's going to be a great opportunity for
Hold that thought. What we're going to do now, I'm going to show you something to the audience here and those with us virtually. But during that, think about questions for Cristiano based on what you see. And so with that, let's bring up the video. And Cristiano, when it comes up and plays, explain to us a little bit what it is that we're seeing. Because here at the Bloomberg Technology Summit, we're going to nail the technology any second. Just wait. The video is going to come. And when it does, it will have been worth the wait. Here we go.
Yes, so what you basically see is a ControlNet demo. You have an input image on your phone. You tell in your input prompt, what do you want the image to be? You want it to make it a masterpiece, look like Venice canals, 4K, and it just runs and give you this very unique image to image, that's never been created before, created to AI, running on your phone. So it's a good, I think, time to talk a little bit about how we think about AI at the edge, outside the data center. Because like we have seen everywhere, there's going to be this huge opportunity for the cloud, but it's going to be this huge opportunity for devices. Because what you do on the device is very different. So there's a number of reasons why this is going to be very popular on the device. First, the device has contextual information about you and has real-time information, like a picture you just took. And you want it right now, at that moment, change that picture and share with somebody else with your messaging platform.
For context, that video, that device was run in airplane mode without any external connection, right? It ran the model locally on device.
Absolutely. So that's one of the reasons. You have real-time contextual information. There's another reason. Processing on the phone is virtually free. When you think about you running those models in the cloud, and think about a large language model, for every token, like a word as the sentence, if you do that, if you have experiment that, you see the words coming up. For every token, you're running the entire model, and you use a lot of cloud computing. But the computing that is in the palm of your hand, in the dashboard of your car, in your computer, that processing power is available and is dedicated to you. So that's another reason you're going to run those on the devices. The number 3 reason is you can see this, and there's a lot of academia work. Those models, when they get very well trained, they become smaller. So one of the things we have done that's very unique to Qualcomm, we spent a decade on this. I think we invested in this before it was popular. It's kind of the history of many of the things that in Qualcomm done on research. What we did is, could we come up with ability to do very high performance accelerated computing on the device, running large number of parameters, and you can do it, for example, in a phone without compromising battery life. Because you're gonna never trade the form factor and the battery life. You expect it to do all this computation and still last all day. So we developed some very unique technology, which is the most efficient accelerated computing from a performance per watt. And we're bringing that to all of our devices. Just to give an order of magnitude. The new Snapdragon processor we're going to launch this year for flagships that come to the market 24 is going to support in excess of 10 billion parameter models running locally on the device. On what we're going to do it in Windows on ARM platform, it's going to be over 20 billion parameters. What we're going to do in cars is going to be in the order of 40 to 60 billion parameters running on the device. So what you think about it, when you see all of those models being well-trained and become smaller, we're going to see the development of what we call hybrid AI. You would do a query, like you just did this query. You had this picture, you wanted to do this. If the model's very well-trained, it will run on a device, and it's going to cost nothing to the cloud.
I think the question that the audience will have, and I have, is, say shipping in 2024, but how real is this? The demonstration showed you running a 1.5 billion parameter model. When can we do that? For real?
It's more real than you think. For example, Stable Diffusion, which is text to image, this summer we're getting to sub 5 seconds with no cloud connectivity. In our Snapdragon Summit, we're going to show 10 billion parameters running, and you'll be able to buy, for example, if you want to buy a Galaxy S24 that launches next year, you're going to have that computing power.
So there are lots of engineers that I speak to. You are yourself an engineer, and they do express skepticism that this is going to happen, that all of us will be running large language models or generative AI tools locally on device without connection with billions of parameters because they doubt the processor power or they doubt the work that you can do at Qualcomm on the algorithms. Where did you do the innovation?
Okay, so this is a good question, and that's why I was about to tell you about how we think about hybrid AI. It's actually like your phone works today. You have a lot of applications in your phone. You go to the App Store, you have a lot of apps, and the apps are being processing on the device, and they're being processed in the cloud. They work as a single computing. So hybrid AI is what's happening right now. Is really that. You have a model running locally. You provide a query to the model. The model will decide if it runs locally or you give a cloud a head start in sending tokens to the cloud. So it's going to be completely transparent to you. And some applications, it's not just because you don't want to use the cloud. You want the fast response on the device because of latency or contextual information. But here's how I like to explain this. When the smartphone happened, I think most people don't remember this. I'm sure I'm going to show my age. I've been in every transition of technology at Qualcomm. But we were the first company that came up with the concept. At the time, we got a Palm OS, a Palm Pilot, connected with cellular, and created the very first smartphone in the world. And this was the time when the feature phones, you use your phone to make calls and texts. That's what you use your phone for. And GPS was just for E911. That's the only application. All of a sudden, this became a computer. And people say, what am I going to do with it? I like to put this example. I remember when we talk about 4G broadband, there was a lot of analysts with their BlackBerries telling us, who wants this? What are you going to do with this? I have everything I need in my BlackBerry. It was an incredible device.
Well, we should acknowledge or pull one out. BlackBerry is not really a thing anymore, is it?
Well, what it shows is the revolution that happened with all of those applications on their phone. That's how you should think about AI. We're just at the very beginning. we're just showing some examples, Stable Diffusion, ControlNet. We're going to have some example photo, but there's going to be so many different applications. Think about a car, for example. I like this example because as a kid, I used to watch Knight Rider kids. Think about natural language conversation. It's perfect for a car.
But
right?
why is Qualcomm relevant to that discussion?
Well, just look at what we're doing right now. I think probably I don't have to tell you about our position in the mobile market. I think especially on premium computing for the Android space. We're now virtually working with every brand, virtually every brand in automotive for next generation digital cockpit. We've been working with Microsoft for the transition of next generation PCs using our silicon. We have been the partner of choice of companies like Meta, Microsoft, announced with Google and Samsung for augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality devices. And we've been expanding to industrial Internet of Things.
Let's hit pause for a second, because I know that you're a busy man and you're operating in a lot of fields. Go back to that video and this audience question. Why would I want to locally process a complex model on a small device when those models would run better in the cloud? And I guess that applies to the automotive example as well.
Yes, so this is, instead, I provided the answers to those questions in the phone, but I'm gonna change the conversation a bit and talk about in the car. So, when you are inside the car, right, and like for example, we have a lot of AI in the car today for assisted driving and autonomy. Just to give an example, if you look at GM, Super Cruise, Ultra Cruise, all running on a Qualcomm AI processor. We have a lot of AI processing in the car. The car needs to make decisions that are very context related in real time. If you, for example, when you think about an ADAS system, assisted driving, the sensors in the car for assisted driving autonomy see an image, you need to make a decision. That computation needs to happen locally. The reason Qualcomm became successful and we're expanding in ADAS is because you cannot put a server in the trunk of a car, especially in an EV, take away from the range. But now that computing power you can use for a large language model. In the car, this model can be as big as the model in the cloud. And you have now the real context information. You're talking, let's say you're talking in the car of the future, you're talking to the model like you would in Knight Rider kit. And you give a very complex instruction for the car. I want to go home, on the way home, I want to stop here, I want to order this, I want to pick it up. And those things are going to be very related to the information you have. It doesn't mean that you're separating the AI from the car from the cloud. They're all combined. But everything that is contextual rich for that moment, the AI in the car is going to make a huge difference.
In a single word, day, weeks, months, probably years, when does that happen?
Look, it's very difficult to make a prediction. It's the same try to make a prediction.
But broadly.
I'm an optimist, so I think we're going to start to see next year in 24 for phone applications a lot richer. Thank you. We're going to see a lot richer ability to use AI for photography, like this example we just gave. How people share information, whether it's on WhatsApp or Google Messages, how they're going to share photos, how they're going to create content. You're going to see that next year.
Okay.
I think you're going to see a lot of productivity next year. We talk with Microsoft. We had incredible demos at Microsoft Build, showing the co-pilot of all the Microsoft applications running on our AI engine in our future SoC that has our custom CPU. They're going to the Windows devices in 24.
No connection.
In 24. And see, this is another interesting thing. Enterprise applications. When ChatGPT thing happened, it was an incredible thing. I immediately was in the internal memo say, our engineers can't get our source code and just send it to ChatGPT to verify this code, because that's going to go into the wilderness, right? So enterprises really want, for certain applications, to run the data locally. So Microsoft has an incredible technology that you can provide a data set. It could be an Excel spreadsheet. And you apply the model on that spreadsheet. That's a great example of why you want to run those things locally. Some enterprises may not want to send the data to the cloud, and that's how the enterprise works.
I know you, and I knew that you would be fired up about this, and I've only got 30 seconds left, so let's do this. How's doing business with Beijing at the moment?
Look, we have a great partnership with our customers in China. I think Qualcomm is probably one of the few examples of a very successful partnership and business with China. All of our customers in China pay intellectual property on cellular essential patents. We're all licensed, they pay. We have a vibrant business on the phone space with companies like Xiaomi, Oppo, OnePlus, Vivo, and Honor, etc. And as China builds an incredible industry for EV, they're all using Qualcomm chipsets. We're growing in industrial. So here's how I see it. If you are a leader on a particular technology, you will have a big business in China. It's just the nature of the size of the GDP, and that's what we see happening with Qualcomm right now.
Very quickly, or Brad and Emily will be very angry at me. Does AI complicate that relationship with China?
No, look, you should think, if you think about what's happening in phones, in PCs, in cars, everything at the edge, it's one of those things that is very difficult to make predictions in politics, but to this date, we have been able to continue to support development on-device AI, and I think across all the different industries in China, and there's some very interesting development, especially from the phone industry, how they're using this to create content or support creators.
Cristiano Amon, Qualcomm CEO, making the case basically for the future of AI being on what you're all pointing at me right now, your smartphones. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Please welcome to the stage Adobe Generative AI and Sensei VP Alexandru Costin and Creative Artists Agency Chief Legal Officer Hillary Crane with Bloomberg's Rachel Metz.
Hello, thank you. Good morning. Good morning to you guys. Thank you both so much for being here. We got a lot to talk about. AI and artists, and there's just so much happening there. AI has long been used by artists, and it's gotten easier and cheaper and more widespread with systems like Stable Diffusion and DALL-E and ChatGPT, Adobe's Firefly, which I know you've been working on, and so on. So what are some of the most interesting uses that the two of you are seeing for generative AI in creating art?
Well, I think there's tons of examples. AI, like many things before, is just a new tool for the creative community. And the creative community is very adept at taking on new tools and applying human creativity to get new art forms. One interesting thing we've seen in just the past couple of weeks is there's going to be a release of a new Beatles song. There was a tape of John Lennon's voice where the quality was very poor, and he and his family said, no, we can't make a song out of it, and AI has now been able to clean that up to make it of high enough quality that Paul McCartney, with the consent of the family, is going to release the first new Beatles song in decades. They released others in '95, but the technology wasn't good enough for this one. That's a fantastic application of the tool. We also see it being used in post-production in order to make a lot of things easier that were harder before. You can do a lot of things without the presence of the talent by using scans, and that's going to be another fantastic application, and it's the sky's the limit. I think we're only beginning to scratch the surface on where the creativity will lead us.
And Alexander, what kinds of things are you seeing?
Same in our world when we look at the spectrum of art and creativity in general, starting from fine arts to consumer content creation. The two biggest uses we've seen recently we launched generative fill in Photoshop for photo retouching, and this took off like one of our most successful betas. So a lot of actual production workflows and content creation workflows for professionals are being helped by generative AI in new ways. And we're also enabling some of that technology for consumers and communicators that don't have the skills to actually create. And we're seeing an actual explosion of creativity at that consumer side, folks that have ideas, but in the past they weren't able to express themselves. Now with the help of generative AI directly integrated in our workflows, they're able to create content and have a differentiated social presence or just communicate with their families, etc.
And Alexandra, you also have a lot of people that are using Firefly that are, as you mentioned, are doing work-related projects with it. Like, what are some things that people are doing with it that you might not have expected?
So we're still in beta, so our general availability release is happening very soon. So everybody is still experimenting on the Firefly website, but we've seen a lot of viral activity with people extending out Beatles album covers, for example. This was something we didn't expect to be as popular and viral, or mixing memes together.
Yeah.
This is like really, really crazy stuff. And again, this is just human creativity at its best when they come up with new ideas and technology just enables this new wave of creativity.
What are some of the concerns that the two of you have about the use of generative AI in the art world, like ethical concerns, particularly around how data is collected to train systems that can generate text or images? This stuff is typically collected from all over the internet, but increasingly some people, such as artists in particular, whose work may have been sort of hoovered up as part of a data set, are upset about that.
Yeah, well, I think you're seeing, I mean, we've already seen the lawsuits. I think Getty Images is the best one. People challenging the practice of on what material you train the machines and the ethics behind what's used to train the machines. Mm-hmm. There is a difference between publicly available and legally available for your use to make money. And the whole intellectual property regime gives rights to certain individual creators and people who appear, and when a machine is trained for a commercial purpose using those rights without their permission, I think you're at serious risk. I think if we think about an actor and how important the creative decisions are that they make, not just when they're doing a role, but as to what roles they agree to do in order to create their whole body of work. That's a real curatorial expression of self. And if other people can take that away from them by using their image and without their consent, using either their prior creative thoughts in the form of a writer or their image or their voice for a musician in order to make a product that they're unaware of or haven't consented to be in, I think we're in very murky, or even not that murky, pretty black and white ethical land where we have to think about how do we create the rules and the norms around use of these creative individuals' work in a way that respects their rights and doesn't do violence. We heard a lot of talk this morning about threatening of humanity, and obviously, human extinction is kind of an important big deal. I get it. But along the way, we shouldn't only think about human extinction. We should think about mapping basic ethics and norms onto this fantastically creative and powerful tool.
And this was top of mind for us too when we designed Firefly, because artists were indeed up in arms about the fact that their public content was used without their consent, compensation, or control. So when we designed Firefly, we actually decided to train only on data we had in Adobe stock and public available data with copyrights expired. And on purpose, we don't include any recognizable character, we don't include any IP, trademarks. So by the nature of the training data, not only we're respectful with our customers, because these artists are basically all of them our customers, but we're also enabling enterprises and creators of content, generative content, to be comfortable using this content, because the risk of generating by mistake or somebody else's IP or a recognizable character is zero.
So, Alexandra, I have a question for you related to that, because Adobe recently said that business users of Firefly can get an IP indemnity from Adobe, which essentially, as I understand it, means that if a business customer is sued over some media that it makes with Firefly, let's say an ad, hypothetically, Adobe will pick up the legal tab, right?
That's basically it. And again, our comfort comes from the fact that we train on data we control, and that's curated both using AI, but more importantly, is curated using human curators, and we make sure we don't leak any IP in it. So this is why we have this comfort for our enterprise customers and for cases where they actually, it's just for the generated content. If they remix it with potentially infringing content, in that case, the IP indemnity doesn't apply. But for pure content generated by Firefly, we are offering this IP indemnity to enterprise customers.
Yeah, I think it's fantastically interesting and pioneering work. The idea of ethical training, I hope, becomes part of the greater lexicon, and that's what's happening here, and it's important for the corporate and business clients who have that indemnity. But we were also talking about the democratization of creativity and allowing somebody like me who lacks it to have the tools to perhaps create things. I don't want to be stealing somebody else's work as I'm exploring my creativity for the first time. And so having tools and mechanisms that would give me or every other creator the confidence that when they're diving in to this world for the first time, they're not doing it in a way that's doing violence to other creative people who've invested their lifetime in the work, I think is super important, and I really commend Adobe for what they've done.
Thank you.
I'm curious, though, what did Adobe's lawyers think of that? And Hillary, as a lawyer yourself, maybe you've got some thoughts on that.
I mean, Dana Rao, our chief legal officer, would be a better person to enter this, but they're fully behind this. And for a long time, actually, we've been pioneering many other innovative things in the context of generative content, like the content authenticity initiatives that I want to touch upon later on. But we do have, again, our legal department full support, and because they know how we train. They're deeply involved. Our legal department runs what's called our AI ethics program. So we have a program we've set up many years ago in 2020 when we've started pioneering generative AI using GANs, which is a different type of model with neural filters in Photoshop. We had our legal department full engagement, so we've created this AI ethics department that helped us navigate all of those, not only training data issues, but also bias and harm reduction initiatives, et cetera. So we do have a long history of investing thoughtfully in this space.
Okay. Hillary, I have a question for you specifically about some stuff that's going on right now in Hollywood. Earlier this month, the biggest union in Hollywood, the SAG-AFTRA Actors Union, began negotiating with studios regarding a new 3-year contract. One of the issues they're discussing is the use of AI to do things like mimic users' voices or their bodies. So I'm curious, like, how you envision generative AI changing Hollywood, and who stands to benefit and who stands to get hurt from this?
Well, I think that's a question that remains unanswered, and I'm not myself involved in the Guild conversations. I hasten to point out it's not only the Screen Actors Guild, the Directors Guild reached an agreement with the studios on AI,
okay,
and the Writers Guild is also in the mix, and I think we're going to have to wait to see what all of those negotiations yield. But in the end, I'll go back to where I started. As a tool for creativity, I think we're going to see an explosion of content in Hollywood that could be good for Hollywood, but only if we pay attention to establishing the ethical norms and creating a world in which, before the law or legislation can catch up, the genie is let out of the bottle because it is normalized to steal the content that's available but not legally available for use. And thus, I think we're in a little bit of a time race to get to the ethical standards to make sure that this tool in the end delivers on the creative promise of it, both for the amateur, but all the way up through the chain of Hollywood.
One more thing I wanted to ask you about related to actors and to contracts and stuff. I'm curious if you're seeing AI, the applications of generative AI being discussed or put into film contracts. And if so, how? And what kind of questions does this bring up for artists protecting their images?
Well, so, you know, AI, generative AI is new, but the idea of special effects is not new.
Yeah.
And the ability to manipulate images to change them post-production has existed for a long period of time, so we have some precedent here. And it is pretty well established that the studios seek consent from the artist before they will fundamentally change their performance. I'm going to forget the actor, but there was an example of 2 decades ago where they added a tear to an actor's performance that he didn't approve of. And when he saw the film and he had a tear, he was like, how'd that happen? And this conversation started that long ago, and it's continuing. There is a question of who owns the character? Who owns the digital image of the actor who creates the character? What control should that actor have over use of those tools in the future, both in respect to the piece of art that they've agreed to make and with respect to other pieces of art? I think ultimately we're going to get to a comfortable place with the studios because the studios and artists are in a symbiotic relationship. More concerning is those who are not part of the mainstream but who want to jump in by creating work they now have the ability to create at much lower cost because of the availability of machines that have potentially been trained on the pilfered content. That's a real problem.
Let's talk a little bit about audience awareness. This is something I think about whenever I see a trailer that might use AI in a certain way, or I've seen some commercials that are using AI. When should the audience be made aware if when AI is part of the creative process? Why and why not? And Alexandria, I know Firefly does some embedded details to mark AI-generated images, but I'm not sure how that translates to like a final product.
Yeah, so for a long time, as we were pioneering those generative work, we were receiving this media attention and industry feedback that we need to invest in content authenticity. We need to basically help content consumers understand whether a piece of content was digitally edited, and in this case, more recently, fully generated synthetically. And 4 years ago, our legal department at NRA, we pioneered the creation of the Content Authenticity Initiative, which is a consortium that has 1,000 members now, starting from camera manufacturers like Qualcomm and others, and ending up with websites and content consumption places. And across the stack, we're encouraging the implementation of a nutrition label, digital nutrition label, which we call content credentials, that is a piece of information that describes what modifications were brought to that content, and that's embedded cryptographically in the content itself. So that means that somebody consuming a piece of content with content credentials embedded, they should be able to read the nutrition label. They should be able to understand, is this piece of content real, or is it generated or edited so it doesn't represent the original intent? And this is extremely important in this age where it's so easy to create this content. Imagine the implications of deepfakes in politics. And I mean, this is a really serious issue, and this is why we're encouraging a lot of our partners we're working with generative companies like Stability AI and Spawning.ai and others to standardize on this content credentials initiatives, content authenticity initiative, so consumers of content have the option to first verify and then trust the piece of content. Today, you see a photo, it looks real, you implicitly believe it immediately. But in reality, in this new future where all content will be modified digitally or generated fully, we need to enable content to embed this authenticity information so consumers can have the right of understanding and then verifying and then trusting that piece of information.
I agree with all of that, and I believe that some form of watermarking or otherwise, being able to trace the provenance of a piece of art back to the consent of the artists who are included should be a part of this kind of nutrition label. And the reason I go for a watermark is because it's not just as you're watching the whole content. As we know, somebody can take a clip of that may or may not have the nutrition label, put it on a platform, and it can be around the world before the artist even knows it's happened to them. But if we can embed something that'll pop, that'll show not okay or okay, that's part of the solution. Are we there yet technologically? I don't think so, but with the smart guys sitting next to me working on it and others, and if we take them at the word, the leaders we heard from this couch this morning, I think that we can do a lot to create these tools that'll make it a much safer environment.
Right. Thank you both so much for talking to me about this. It was wonderful to have you here. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. And you guys can just walk up that way. Thank you. It was so nice to see you in person. Thank you, too. And now I'd like to welcome to the stage Imad Mostak, CEO and founder of Stability AI. Imad, thank you so much for joining me. We've got a lot to talk about.
Yes.
Has it been exactly 10 months since Stability AI released Stable Diffusion publicly?
Yeah, we released it with Confiz and Runway 10 months ago. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like 10 years.
Okay. What has changed since then? Because a lot has changed.
I think that, when we kind of released it, it was building on the research of many others and kind of this whole ecosystem. It was the first large-scale usable model on someone's laptop. So that's why you saw such a massive take-up of it. Like, it overtook Bitcoin and Ethereum in 3 months. What took them 10 years in developer interest on GitHub, and now, cumulatively, the whole ecosystem's overtaken Linux. As you saw ChatGPT and others come, you now have where we are now, which is this technology everywhere, and everyone talking about it, so yeah.
And let's talk about the new model that's out today. Tell us about SDXL 0.9 and what it means for Stability AI. And if we could see some of those images, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so I think, there's continuous evolution. So 3 of the 5 Stable Diffusion authors, including the 2 leads, we're lucky they work at Stability, plus, again, this whole ecosystem that took an open model and they just improved it iteratively. So SDXL, we kind of scaled it up and introduced some new architectures. So it can now do hands.
Look at that one.
That was always a thing, because hands are kind of weird. I mean, like, can an AI do hands? No, can you? It's kind of difficult. Perfect hands, perfect text, photorealistic images now. But also with some mitigations built in, because again, that's why it was important to put it out into the open, so everyone could both improve it and then attack it so it becomes more robust.
You said mitigations?
Yes.
What does that mean exactly?
So, you have things like, we had photorealistic models earlier this year that we didn't release because the time wasn't quite right for it, because you had to build in things like invisible watermarking, working with Adobe on content authenticity.org and many others as well, because the technology is inevitable, because you see it emerging everywhere. And part of what we want to do at Stability is introduce standards around that, so you can track it, so you can use it, and use it appropriately.
So like right now, if I were to use the latest model, let's say I generated this picture or something similar to it, since it's available as of today, would it have some sort of embedded watermarking?
Yes, we can't reveal full details about that, so there's some official ones, some unofficial ones. Because these models become the default that people use, and you want to have some way of telling what is generated versus what is not, and that's a huge research area.
Okay. Excuse me. A persistent issue with all kinds of AI image generators, including Stable Diffusion, is bias in the images that are generated. As we know, that stems in large part from the training data. How is Stability AI addressing bias in its Stable Diffusion models, and how do you improve this over time?
Yeah, I think there was a great research report done by your colleagues, kind of where they looked at the original Stable Diffusion that was its academic release and the inherent biases, because it was taken at a picture of the available internet, and then it reflected the biases of that internet, which is very Caucasian, Western, and others. Part of our mission at Stability is to build a foundation to activate humanity's potential, so we're working with multiple governments already on national data sets that reflects the culture of those countries. For example, one of our team members, Makoto Shing, did Japan Stable Diffusion, where they swapped out the language version, because if you typed in salaryman to the original Stable Diffusion, it was a very happy man with lots of money.
Oh, okay.
The Japanese version is a very sad person.
Yes.
And I think this is the future. Every single country, this is vital infrastructure. They need their own data sets, they need to have their own models, and they need to be able to interact to reflect those contexts and address these biases. Now, we can't do that with black boxes. There's no way to have one model to rule them all that reflects everyone's context.
So you're working right now on different data sets for different countries?
Yeah, so you take national broadcaster data, you take education data, you take cultural data, and you build from there. Because I think from a safety perspective, we can't train on the whole internet anymore. The internet's full of garbage. And so that's one of the reasons we offer opt-out of data sets, and we have massive investments in refining data sets, because we should move to having that as a common infrastructure, both for the proprietary models of the OpenAIs and Anthropics of the others of the world, and also for the open models, because you are what you eat, and right now the models are fed biased garbage. No wonder they turn out a bit weird. Let's feed them better stuff so we have nice free-range organic models.
If I'm a country and I'm building a data set that I want to be used for a model, who owns that data set then? Is that belonging to the country? Like, who is in charge of that?
I believe it should be national infrastructure. In the UK, we have HDR UK, which organized the national biology and data information infrastructure with federated learning and others. I think this will be infrastructure for every country, so every country has the data sets. Because you have public broadcasting data. That should be used to power AI models. And then that will lead to the innovation that we also require to deal with what's coming. Because this technology is going everywhere, it's not enterprise ready. Next year that kicks off, and the only thing that I think that can solve the disruption here is innovation. So it becomes vital for countries to stoke that innovation through open data, through open models, and innovation enhancement.
I'm going to ask you a little bit about finance. Last year, Stability raised $101 million at a valuation of $1 billion, and we understand you're trying to raise more. Can you talk about how much you're trying to raise?
Well, we're not trying to raise more, but we have constant interest. Yesterday I received 8 incoming investor interest notes because we're a bit different. Our total addressable market is all the private data in the world and turning it intelligent, whereas everyone else is looking at proprietary models, which I believe is a race to zero. So through amazing partnerships like with AWS and more to be announced, our models will be available anywhere, because our aim is to have the default model of every modality, commercial variants, and national variants. So you can have an Indian insurance stable chat. I think, you scale when it's ready, and we're nearly ready, but you don't try to overscale. And it's very difficult because to build these models, you need supercomputers, you need all of these things, but once they're built, they can go everywhere, which is amazing operational leverage.
There was a recent Forbes article that said particularly that you've exaggerated at times about a few different things. Has that made fundraising any more challenging? And what about your existing investors? How have they responded to that?
So, the existing investors, we've been having constant dialogue with them. They've been helping through this process. In terms of additional fundraising, again, we're not actively fundraising right now, but the interest just continues to go up because ultimately, it says things like AWS partnership. They built us one of the largest supercomputers in the world before funding, and we have an amazing partnership. They talk about technology. We've released another amazing image model. We have language models, code models, and more coming. I think it's an interesting thing because a year ago we were a pre-seed startup, now we're a scale-up, and next year we might be a multinational. Growing pains are always there, but the ultimate thing is you just have to deliver on what you say you're going to do.
You mentioned language model, and I know that a few months ago you released Stable LM. So what's happening with that now? Because that was like a pretty early version when it came out.
Yeah, so next week we're moving to properly open development. So we have a blog and a whole series of papers out with that. And we had an alpha, and now we're going to have a beta of it, which is a massive step up from there. So last week we released kind of Open Llama, which was a replication of kind of Meta's Llama, except for fully open. And now it's going to be a highly refined version. I think what you're going to see with language models now, we just had Qualcomm Cristiano coming on, is that you will probably see GPT 3.5 level performance on the edge by next year, if I look at current trends. A large part of that is data. So with the right data, you can have a 10 times performance increase, and that's something we saw when we funded DataComp on the image side. With a tenth of the data, it outperformed OpenAI's Clip image-to-text model because the data was such high quality. Again, stop feeding the models garbage, get rid of all the rubbish, and you will have highly efficient architectures.
I want to go back just for a moment to the Forbes article, and to something you told my colleague Tom McKenzie recently. He asked you about claims in the Forbes article that you have a tendency to exaggerate. You said, I get excited. And I'm curious, what guardrails are you putting in place to make sure your storytelling and your narrative match with what's actually happening on the ground?
Well, I think it's surrounding yourself with good people. I think it's not kind. I was thinking a lot about this. So I have Asperger's and ADHD, and I have a very definitive view of the future. Mm-hmm. And I think that shocks people because we can't deal with exponentials. What's coming now with generative AI? Like, SageMaker has 100,000 SME customers. Every single one will use this technology at the same time as soon as it's enterprise ready. Mm-hmm. This is the biggest economic impact and deflationary thing that's going to hit our economy of all time. I say something like that, it sounds like an exaggeration because I'm definitive, but it's what I genuinely believe. And And again, this is a difficulty I have, and I'm doing the best I can. One thing I don't do anymore is I commit to release dates.
Okay.
And so my team have been bashing me over the head about that. So no more release date commitments, just release when it's ready.
Okay, I understand that because sometimes with articles, I just kind of say, yeah, it'll be, sometime this week.
Yeah, exactly. Like we nearly had Stable Diffusion ready, and it was super fast, but then it just kind of didn't work, and we couldn't release it. Yeah, you do the best you can.
One concern that people have raised in general about generative AI, both text-based and systems that are creating images, is the extent to which startups and large companies alike are looking to bring in people that can work on the ethics side of AI, people who can develop guardrails within companies. What are you doing on this? Do you have any AI ethicists on staff?
I think it's interesting. So my background is in ethics and Islamic law, which is a very different type of ethics in some ways, but I'm a computational theologist. And so we have a safety team that we're building out. We work with kind of RLHF teams and others because the models are first deep learning trained, and then you use RLHF, reinforcement learning with human feedback, to bring them towards human. And so we have our TRLX library, which is the most popular one from our Copper AI lab. And we've been bringing in ethicists and others from external parties to look at that. But no one's quite sure what AI ethics is right now.
No one's quite sure what?
What AI ethics is right now.
Okay.
And so part of the thing is to expand the conversation. This is also why we support AIandfaith.org and other things, because the conversation does need to be broadened because it is so complex and it's hitting every part of society. That's one reason why I was the only AI CEO to sign both of the FLI and safety letters, because I think this is a discussion we have to have now, and more voices need to be brought in, because right now it's mostly guys here in Silicon Valley. I don't think that's correct.
But do you truly feel that AI is at this moment an existential threat?
I think it will be like that movie Her, where we're kind of boring and it'll bugger off. Thanks for all the GPUs. But I could be wrong. And that's why I think right now we need to move before the economic impact happens. This is like COVID before Tom Hanks. We haven't had that moment yet. Everyone's talking about it, your mum's talking about it. But it's not real. Next year it becomes real, and the economic impacts become huge. And the existential side, from having crap data that we're feeding these models, the whole of YouTube and others, no wonder it turns out weird. So let's feed it better data now, let's put some proper standards in place, and let's build AI that is good for us and doesn't work against us.
It feels almost like you think that that is inevitable, that's an inevitable outcome. Do you feel like that is an inevitable outcome? I guess from my perspective, I'm like, well, if this hasn't happened yet, there are so many different directions that things could go.
I think never the same again is an interesting thing.
Say that again?
Never the same again.
Okay.
So no head teacher in a school can set essays for homework anymore because of GPT-4. It's never the same again. I think we're going to see a lot of those, a regime change over the next period, and this technology is inevitable, and it's up to us. It's going to be a bigger economic impact than COVID. Is it up or down? Is it productivity enhancement? Is it job losses? We're not sure about that. And on the existential side, we know, well, my view is that if you have an AI that's more capable than you, the only way to fully control it and align it is to remove its freedom. I don't know how to do that for entities that are more capable than me. But what I can do is I can teach it better. I think the way that you're brought up makes a big difference. We see that in real life. These models are like really talented grads that occasionally go off their meds. We need to fix that. We need to give them better food, better balance. And then I think it's more likely that we will have a positive future, especially because the bad guys already have the technology. You can just download it on a USB stick and boom, you've got it.
What is the most pressing challenge Stability AI is working on right now? I know you guys are involved in lots of different things, so sometimes it's hard for me from the outside to see what you think is the most important.
Well, the most important challenge for us is to be more transparent when there's so much going on and build the human capital. But in particular, the key focus that we have right now is getting language models to the edge. The ability to own your own language models can help you protect against other language models. That will become increasingly convincing. And I think everyone needs to be able to own their own models, given how powerful they are and how they extend our capabilities. Just like in crypto, there was that phrase, not your keys, not your crypto. I think it's going to be not your models, not your mind, as we move from here.
Explain that a little bit more.
If you are outsourcing a lot of your cognitive capability to models that are black boxes and they have inherent biases, then it's going to be more and more influential on you, versus if you have control of your own models for your private data, your private knowledge, be it as Rachel, as Bloomberg, as a country. And so it's a question of who controls this technology that both extends your capability, but then you rely on increasingly. And that's why I think there needs to be open, flexible alternatives to that.
But might I not want to do that at all? Might I not want to be involved with that period?
Yeah, but at least you should have the choice. Right now, you do not have the choice. If you want the most advanced technology, it's a black box that can be turned off at any time. Like OpenAI had an amazing image model, DALL-E 2, that they banned all Ukrainian content from 9 months and all Ukrainians from using. And it's completely within their prerogative because of political issues. But imagine if that was the only one and you didn't have Stable Diffusion. I don't think that would be nice.
Thank you so much. It was really great to speak with you.
Pleasure, Rachel.
Time for a short break, so please head out for coffee, stretch your legs. And also, if you would, check out the Chrome Enterprise Activation out there, which is an immersive experience in web security. There's a game. I failed it. I think you'll probably do better, but try out the game. And then be back here at 10:55 a.m. for our next set of interviews. Thank you.
The program will begin in 10 minutes. Please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Please take your seats. The program will begin now. Please welcome to the stage Chrome Browser Enterprise Managing Director and GTM Lead, Lauren Miskelly, and Bloomberg's James Chem.
Great. Hi, I'm James Cham, partner at Bloomberg Beta, and I'm pleased to be joined by Lauren Miskelly, Managing Director and GTM Lead of Chrome Browser Enterprise for Chrome Enterprise's Sponsor Spotlight, the future of the web, how Chrome Enterprise is shaping the way we work. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you.
So to start, can you give a quick overview of yourself and what you do at Google?
Sure. Thanks for having me. So I'm Lauren Miskelly. I lead our go-to-market team for Chrome Enterprise at Google. And what that means is we focus on bringing the browser to people at work. And my team works every day with customers to make sure that their experience in the browser at work is the best possible.
And then how is the role of the browser evolving within the enterprise today?
Yeah, so cybersecurity threats have become much more sophisticated over the years, and security has always been core to Google's approach to computing, and it underpins all of the technology choices we make every day within Chrome. Computing's also evolving with more and more of our work and lives online in the cloud and online and in the cloud every day. So because of that, corporate data, our customers are more and more asking how to protect corporate data online. So we're seeing that be prevalent in all of our conversations with customers. So securing that data becomes really important, and you need to secure that both at rest, in transit, and where our users are, which is in the browser. So we approach that in two ways from a Chrome perspective. The first is protecting the user and protecting them in the browser itself. And then secondly, offering more controls and management of that through Chrome Enterprise.
Okay, so that's terrifying and kind of scary. We should maybe talk about the fun stuff.
Okay.
So, future of browsing in the enterprise?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we're seeing more and more work happening in the browser, and we'll continue to see that trend for sure. I think it'll be easier for people to do work more than ever before, and the browser will be smarter. So you'll be able to pick up where you left off, so less time trying to remember where you were. Probably that shortcut you told me about before.
What is it? Command-Shift-A, which is the
favorite.
best shortcut for Chrome ever. Everyone should try it.
Plug there. And I think there'll be more separation between your personal browser and your work browser. We'll also see, and I think people have heard a lot of this today, AI coming more and more to the forefront, both to help folks stay productive and from a security perspective. So from a productivity perspective, just making your life easier in the browser, making you work smarter, not harder. And then from a security perspective, we've been building security, AI, and ML into the browser for years, and we'll just continue to build upon that. Finally, I think we'll see IT and security teams be able to more easily manage the browser and have more granular controls, which should free up time for them to work on more strategic initiatives and less time updating the browser.
And then are there other angles around AI and ML that are interesting?
Definitely. So like I mentioned, we've been using AI and ML for years from a security standpoint. So for example, safe browsing within Chrome, it protects billions of users every day, and it does so through constant crawling of the internet to look for malicious sites, files, downloads to protect users. So that's one specific example with security. The next is Chrome Journeys. So I don't know if you've used that feature, but it helps users take complex information and tasks and clusters the browsing activity to make it helpful on the next steps. So for example, I was researching, doing an event with my team and wanting to do some team building exercises, both virtual, in person, did a lot of searching across that, and then got distracted, started doing something else. And I was able to go back to Chrome and it predicted for me that workflow of saying, here's all the things you were searching on, and you probably want to go back to that, but also here's some also similar sites that might help you complete this task. So that's from that perspective. I think we'll also see generative AI play a bigger and bigger role, especially when it comes to for work and being helpful for the employee to, from a search standpoint. So when you think about that from search, it's really about looking for a specific result and helping an employee find that answer faster and then get to that information quicker. So that would mean having a more personalized panel to say, here's what you were looking for, let me consolidate that information and make it easier for you to understand. So that's just a way for a worker to get to that information more quickly. So I think we'll see that. And then additionally, you'll see more and more AI and ML built into Chrome and other Google products to come.
And I feel like sort of at Google, you're consistently living in the future, right? And then sort of like in that next version of work that we're going to be living in, what are the sort of features that are going to be important for us?
Yeah, I think we'll definitely, expand on all the features we have now. So I like to think a lot of them are future looking already, but expand on them now and continue to make them better, and then obviously build new features to come. Whether it's capabilities, I'd say to make it easier for you to get around the web and just make that whole experience and journey easier. I think it will surface what you'll need at your next job to get that done more easily. I think you'll get users to where they need to go faster through better URL filtering so that you get there more quickly. And then I would say like a seamless experience working across devices and potentially making passwords a thing of the past.
That would be shocking, right? That'd be great.
Make people's lives easier, for sure.
Okay, so finally, what's your favorite feature that you're working on?
Yeah, so I think I'll say twofold since we have a little time. Okay. So in the professional realm, I would say what I really like is I work now, and I'm sure a lot of you here, across many devices. So being able to pick up where I left off. So if I have a set of tabs that I was using my Chromebook at home on the couch or in the office, and then I moved to my mobile device, opening those same tabs that I was using, and then maybe going to my other device that I have sitting at my desk at home, being able to seamlessly move between those is something that's really easy. And then on a personal side, as a parent of two very busy children, autofill saves my life on a daily basis. So I don't know if anyone else has to fill out a lot of forms constantly, form after form. Being able to not have to write date of birth, all of the things for every one of us, my email address 5 million times. I think that from a just pure productivity standpoint lets me do more work at work and get all the personal stuff out of the way.
That's great. That's great. Okay, so thank you, Lauren. Thanks for joining me today for Chrome Enterprise's Sponsor Spotlight discussing the future of the web.
Thanks. You, James.
Please welcome to the stage Twitch CEO Dan Clancy with Bloomberg's Sarah Friar.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to have the first live interview with Dan Clancy, the CEO of Twitch, who goes live very often on his Twitch, but here speaking to you after his big promotion. So tell me first, how has that transition been? You're president for a while, and now you're running the thing. What's different about that?
So, and first of all, it's great to be here, Sarah. It's fun to be here, and as you said, it is, one thing I do is live stream now, and now I have people out here, and so it's great. So the one thing I've said a few times that I find kind of funny is, before my job was president, and much of the company I was responsible for it, so many of the decisions were the same, but there really is a very visceral difference between feeling that responsibility as CEO. Our platform, we have over 7 million streamers that depend upon us stream every month. And I feel this kind of realization that ultimately in terms of my job, they depend upon me and how I do my job. But it's been really fun.
And tell me how strongly you got that feedback. When you became CEO, it was just after this change in terms of how Twitch was thinking about revenue split with the creators. There was a big blowback. We're seeing a lot of tension right now between social media platforms and their users.
Yeah. So
you're in the thick of it. What's that like?
So we're in the thick of it, and part of it is we matter a lot to our creators. I think Twitch is very unique. I think we're different than many of the other players. And for many of our creators, we're a big part of their lives. They're living a life that they never thought they could have lived, right? And I go out and talk to them, and they go, yeah, I never thought this could be my life.
They're making a living streaming themselves playing video games.
And doing other stuff. And they're like, who'd have thought this could have been? And so it matters to them. And so then they keep a very close eye on us. And I think their response is actually an expression of how much we matter to them.
But you did have to make some changes based on that response. Like, how do you navigate? Because you're CEO of Twitch, but you answer to Amazon. And how do you navigate continuing to grow this community, continuing to have that kind of path to profitability? Am I correct that Twitch is not yet profitable?
We don't talk about that, so
but
you're not going to get me to answer here. Good try, though, Sarah.
A decade past that, since the acquisition by Amazon, I mean, you must be feeling some pressure on that end too. And how do you balance the two?
So the way I think of this is, we do have a responsibility to our creators to make sure we're here for a very long time. And so yes, the way I describe it is we need to make sure we're a sustainable business. And that is serving what we're trying to do with them. And so I think anyone who's been in any position, you're always balancing things. The hard decisions are never the ones that are obvious. The hard decisions are when you're weighing a bunch of different things and you have to figure out a path.
I want to get your thoughts on some other hard decisions that we've seen leaders of social media platforms make recently. I mean, there was the backlash over changes at Reddit that caused a strike by several communities. There's been a lot of uproar about changes at Twitter since Elon Musk took over. Instagram's algorithm has been changing. Meta's been changing, pivoting more to video and entertainment than updates from friends and family. What have you learned from looking at that, the difference in those communities and how they've grown, and how does it make you want to grow?
So I think each of those communities are different. I think everyone here knows what it's like to live in a social media world where there's always very vocal critics of almost anything. So part of what you need to do is understand a North Star of where you're going. And for us, our North Star is thinking about the streamers that come on our platform in terms of, we use this phrase, fame, money, and love, because we've used that since the founding. We're really a big part of what happens on Twitch is they build communities, and then from that community, they can make money and sustain themselves. And so I think you just go back to your mission, and then you just realize if you stay true to that and you keep pushing, then I think you get there.
But there's always a tension. You're asking people to do this, to make a living off of it, but then you also need to run a business. And you're saying running a business is also good for them. How do you communicate? In one way, I think that you do this is by using the platform yourself and seeing how it works. How do you build that rapport with the users and like, get them to trust that you're taking this in the right direction?
I mean, for us, trust is a big deal, and I think, in fact, that's one of the things that I'm mostly focused on. I don't think people trust people. They don't necessarily always trust companies. I think that's naturally the way we are. We depend upon our streamers, so I've been spending a lot of time going on. In fact, last night I was in LA in a dinner we had with about 40 of our strongest streamers. I'm going to Denver next week where I'm spending time with them. So I've really been doing two things. One is going around and physically spending time with them because it's that direct connection where you can hear from them. And then the other thing, as you said, is using the product. So, I started streaming every week, and it's a small stream. And so it's really neat because a lot of people come up on the stream, and then I let them come up on my stream. We have a new feature guest star where I can bring audience members up. And they just, and many times these are small streamers. I play the piano and sing, I play the piano and sing, and then I also talk to them. And I talk to them about their experiences on Twitch. And they just love the fact that they're coming up on the CEOs of Twitch stream and that I'm interacting with them. And they all have small communities. I haven't promoted this. It's, I'll have 100, 150 people at any point in time, 1,500 people in a night. And I think that really gives you a very firsthand, visceral feeling for what so many of our streamers, because we have really big streamers, but so many of our streamers are there streaming to 50, 100, 200 people at any point in time.
I mean, speaking of the visceral feeling of being a streamer, there are the audience pressures that they're getting. There's the hate they may be getting. Are you thinking about, now that you've been doing it, ways to make Twitch a better community from that perspective? From a content moderation perspective, what are you working on there?
I think one of Twitch's, and for those who haven't used Twitch, and I'm going to bet there are a number of people in this audience that haven't used Twitch, a big part of the magic is the fact that it's not just about sitting and watching somebody. It's about the community and the chat and the interaction. And the way I often describe it, I'll go back to an old sitcom, is Cheers used to have this phrase, a bar where everybody knows your name. Well, when people come to Twitch, they're a member of 8, 9, 10 communities where everybody knows their name. And they show up and they say, been a Vixen, where have you been? But a huge part of that is feeling safe when you're in that community. Because as we know in the social media world, there are always people that are out there that are gonna start jumping in and saying all sorts of things. So we spend a ton of time, first of all, building moderation tools to help our creators. And then we also have moderators that are dedicated members of the community that go ahead and control and manage what's said. So that's something that happens on my stream, it happens on every stream. And we're continually looking for ways so that way you can clean up because nobody wants to be there if it's getting.
How does AI change the potential for content moderation? Do you think it has enough? Has it gotten to the point where it can understand when somebody's being awful on the internet?
Yeah, so we use AI to help us with our system called Automod. I think that's one of our strengths. I think actually it's still a testament of how, for all that AI has done, how there's still work to do, because it can detect a fair amount of stuff, but there's a lot of subtle stuff that humans detect that AI doesn't. So we actually use a combination where we use AI and automated techniques, but then we use humans because it's really a combination. We certainly are continuing to invest because I think over time, AI will get better and better at understanding context and understanding nuances.
Because right now it's more supplementary. You still have to have people who know.
I was streaming, and somebody said something. I love the way you finger the keys, and they are honestly talking about me playing piano. Okay, but the AI said, "Oh, this is a little suspect," right? And of course, it was completely okay. And the moderator looked at it and passed it through, but it popped up on mine to say, is that okay, right? And so it's just an example that there's just these very subtle nuances, right? That as humans, we're able to look at something and realize it right away.
So in your world, you're watching people build communities through their creativity, through their expression. We just had a panel about how AI is transforming art, how it's changing what what kind of content we will likely consume in the future. How are you seeing AI change what gets streamed, and can it ever be a part of that community aspect of Twitch?
Yeah. So most of y'all probably aren't aware of this. There's this very interesting live channel that popped up called Never Forever, which was an animated, never-ending Seinfeld episode where they trained it on Seinfeld, and they had these characters that were telling jokes in Seinfeld, and it was quite entertaining. Now, the interesting thing was they eventually violated our community guidelines because that's just the nature of it, right? And so we had to figure out, well, how do you deal with that? But while it was really cool and neat, it's not what makes Twitch magical, because it's the emotional connection with the streamer. So there are all sorts of things. There's some generative AI where people are doing interviews when they acknowledge that this is really, an artificial interview that I think is creative, but I think the foundation is still the human connection. And I know Jason's coming up next, and we're talking about with Discord. The interesting thing is Twitch and Discord are both these testaments of, in the end, as human beings, what we are designed to do is create human connection. That is what we evolved to do. That is what happens on Twitch. That is what happens on Discord. And I don't think it is the same in terms of AI in the middle of that. So I think the foundation of Twitch is still always going to be about human connection.
Give us a sense of how strong that connection can get. Give an example of some of your biggest streamers, and how much are they making? How much are they building on Twitch?
Yeah. So I think really what happens on Twitch is they're all sizes of streamers. Okay. So there are some streamers that will have 20 or 25,000. So if you take Hassan Abi, he'll get a large audience. And it's a very different experience. When you go there and you watch his chat, it's just flying by, because sometimes we talk about it as a stadium experience. But then you have all these creators that then maybe have 500 or 600 at any point in time, okay, or 100 or 200. And so I think you see the gamut. But I think for me, the magic of Twitch are all the smaller communities. We see this in our monetization, where a big part of our monetization is direct support from the community. And you see how they're much more efficient when they're a smaller community, because you have that emotional connection. And so, in fact, per person that's watching, it's much more efficient because of that. So I think really the magic of the fact—
It's not about being a big streamer. It's about
the whole
building
group.
the people who are obsessed with what you're doing.
And it may be that there may be one big streamer that everyone watches, but anyone who uses Twitch also watches a lot of medium and smaller streamers.
We have a question from the audience. How are you seeing creators adopt Gen AI? You talked about the Seinfeld episode example, but are they incorporating it into their streaming work?
Yeah, I think that is the way. I use the concrete example where somebody was doing the synthetic interviews, right? And now they acknowledge they were synthetic interviews, but it was using generative AI, and they were interviewing other Twitch streamers hypothetically. Right? And so I think it is kind of interesting from a creative perspective how it can enhance the creative expression of our creators.
We don't have a lot of time left, so I want to talk to you about growth. Like, how does Twitch grow from here? Because I was looking at the numbers, and it looked like you guys had a really great amount of interest during the pandemic when everyone was home and on their computers without other ways to interact socially. But now it's sort of plateaued. How do you reinvigorate that growth? Do you need to expand beyond gaming? Do you need to build more of those small communities that you were talking about?
Yeah.
How long will it take?
So during COVID, one of the things to me, it demonstrated that there were still all sorts of people we hadn't reached yet, because there are all these people that had some extra free time and they used Twitch. And while we did come back a little bit, still many of those people are still using Twitch. They hadn't experienced Twitch. And part of it is when you experience Twitch, it starts with you getting attached to one creator, okay? The stars are the creators, not the platform, okay? So we absolutely, you talked about going outside of gaming. The way I describe our platform is we've always been a talk platform. It just so happened that people have been gaming while they talk, okay? And now about 30% of our hours watched come from people that aren't gaming while they talk, okay? And we're investing in other ways that people can come on, build communities. I'm the quintessential example of that, right? Because that need for connection is a human need. It's not a gaming need. Gaming does work really well for live streaming, okay? But I think ultimately our growth is foundation on finding how can we unlock more creators and more streamers. So today we have 7 million people who might stream in a month. How do we turn that to 20 million? Because that's the foundation of drives our success.
And setting that example as a CEO helps move the needle in your mind.
Well, actually, it doesn't necessarily move that needle, right? What it does is gives me a very visceral feeling for what they're experiencing. So then as I'm making decisions, as I'm engaging, and it also makes them trust me because they see me out there experiencing them. When I go talk to them, I can talk about their experiences.
Not replaceable by AI. Thank you so much, Dan.
All right, thanks, Sarah. Appreciate
your time.
it. Thanks, Sarah.
And next, we have Emily Chang and Jason Citron from Discord.
Hello again, Jason. Thank
Emily.
you for being here. It's the first time I've seen you in person in a while, which is great. A lot has changed since we last talked. The social media landscape has changed dramatically. Obviously, Elon and Twitter. Meta is struggling. We just heard from Twitch, they're making changes. TikTok is eating everyone's lunch, whether the US government likes it or not. Where do you see Discord's place in the social media landscape?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me, Emily. It's great to be here. Nice to see people in person. It's kind of a fun change of things. So as you know, Discord is a super-powered chat app where people can hang out and talk with their friends, all the way to having communities that come together and do things. And so Discord is really about this feeling of being together with people that you want to spend time with. And we started it originally as a place to talk and hang out with our friends as we played games together. And over time, what we came to notice was the way that the tool worked was just great for groups of 5 friends or 500,000 fans that want to come together. And it can feel like your own sort of living room or private coffee shop or an event hall like this. And today, over 150 million people are using Discord every month to talk and hang out with each other. Fun fact, over 80% of the actual conversations that happen on Discord are in smaller spaces with friends, less like this. 75% of our users are outside of North America. So we're really excited that we get to spend some time every day helping people spend quality time with the people they want to.
So we did do a Twitter poll about messaging, and I believe Discord is on it. And to be fair, it's a poll on Twitter, so
okay.
What's your preferred message? Okay, so Discord is lower on the list, but I know you're not just a messaging platform. There is a question, though. I think a lot of people still think of Discord as this narrow voice chat gaming app. And it is so much more than that. How do you get it from where the world sees it to where you want it to be, or even where you see it?
Yeah, I mean, we're very focused on making an amazing product and service that is easier to use, that helps people spend quality time together with their friends. One of the interesting differences when we talk to people about what makes Discord special and feel magical for them is that it's very much focused on being a place for a group of friends to come together. So unlike perhaps other messengers where you're more sort of chatting with folks, Discord has this sort of sense of people being around. You can kind of run into your friends by accident. It really feels like having your own sort of cozy space that's just for you, whether you want to play games, work on a project, have a weekly sort of movie night or wine get together, but when you can't be in the same place. So we're just focused on telling our story and making a great product. And
it's huge with kids. Maybe parents are still trying to figure it out. Are kids still the biggest demographic on there?
No, most of our users are over 18.
Okay. Yeah. And when we last talked, you talked about this phenomenon of not just second screening, but third screening, where sometimes kids will be on TikTok or watching Netflix, but also on Discord. Can you describe that for us? And what's the upper limit of screening, like 5 screens?
The way the world is going, you can have infinite screens, right? I mean, what people really do with Discord is it's a place for them to get together and do things together. And so typically you'll be on Discord, either a voice chat or video chat, and you may have one person who's text chatting depending on if they feel if they want to engage and lean in that way. And then you're usually doing something else, maybe working on a project, listening to music, watching a movie, playing a game, browsing social media. So it is this sort of like, very rich experience of like sort of the virtual version of sitting on a couch with someone and hanging out and doing something. So that's where these different kind of screens come in.
Now, like most social media companies, social companies, you are struggling with a lot of the same things that everyone else is. And one very unique situation in particular, earlier this year, the largest batch of classified documents, I believe, since Edward Snowden, were dropped on Discord. It sounds like they landed there in January and no one really even noticed until they were shared with a larger group. But what happened there, and how are you managing that?
Yeah, that was a very unusual situation. So let me be clear, sharing illegal information on Discord is against our terms of service. But the challenge with a situation like that is that it's very hard to identify, in fact, maybe impossible, what is actually classified information. The government doesn't even tell people. So this is a challenging situation that I think every platform has to sort of think about how to navigate when you're dealing with classified information, which obviously no one wants that shared, but we also don't know what is classified or what isn't. So as soon as we, as soon as it was identified and brought to our attention, we removed it from the platform, and we've been cooperating with the government.
So did you bring it to the government's attention?
No.
Are you working with any other players on this, and how? Whether it's government agencies, other companies?
We are cooperating with the government as we need to be in situations like this. But we're taking it very seriously.
Yep.
And it's a very challenging and, I'll say it again, unusual circumstance.
So look, the person in question has been indicted. This allegedly came from a gun enthusiast who was with the US Air National Guard, but it has opened this conversation more broadly that Discord has become a haven for extremists. What's your response to that?
We have a zero tolerance policy for extremism and hate on our platform, and we take it very seriously. We have built in from the beginning, from day zero, privacy controls and tools that people can use to enforce, sort of norms and keep their space safe. So if you run your own community, you can sort of decide what's okay there and what is not okay there. However, we also have community guidelines that we expect people to enforce in their spaces. And we employ about 15% of our workforce is focused on trust and safety, many engineers and many support people, where if the moderators, let's say, need help, they can come to us, or if they're not doing their job, we'll go to them. And it's a very serious situation that we spend a lot of energy on, but it's challenging. And every day, we try to do a better job than we did yesterday.
So I think one of the things about Discord, and for those who haven't necessarily used it, is it's a lot of this activity is happening in these private servers, and it's not searchable. And I think some people think that makes it even harder to find people doing bad things. Does the architecture itself make it harder to police? And how are you thinking about that?
Well, so Discord it is more like a group chat app than a social media product. I know this is sort of the social media section, but we actually don't even really think of ourselves as social media. Our business model is different, and we're more of a communications product. So we give people tools to moderate their own spaces, and that goes a very long way. But one important thing with Discord is that we do not use end-to-end encryption. And while we do not proactively read people's messages, that does give us the ability to comply with law enforcement requests as appropriate. If people report messages to us, we can go look, and we do proactive investigations based on external signals to try to identify where bad actors may be spending time on our platform, and we do proactively go and find them. We do ban users, we do shut down servers, and we do report things to governments.
There's also a concern about, and look, I know this is a tough line of questioning, but child predators. This is an article that just came out yesterday from NBC. Child predators are using Discord, a popular app among teens, for sextortion and abductions. That's your company.
Yeah, it's horrible.
I mean, this person is just the person from the Canadian Center of Child Protection saying it's just the tip of the iceberg. How do you respond to that?
I mean, as a parent, it's mortifying, and we take this stuff very seriously. We have a team that is working every day tirelessly to try and keep these people off of our platform and find these things when they're happening in a way that respects the privacy of all the people who are not doing these things. You know, one of the things we do, for example, is every image that gets uploaded to Discord is scanned for CSAM, and if we detect it, we report it. So we do try to be proactive about these things in ways that technology allows. But when you have a system with so many people, it's a daily thing, and we, like I said, we try to get better every day.
Will AI help with that or make it harder?
AI will help with it. You know, one of the challenges I think that all of the folks in our industry have is that when you have so many things happening at scale on a platform, it's so hard to sort of identify things. I mean, you know, Dan just spoke about this a little bit, but we also have our own sort of AutoMod project where we're testing out, you know, using large language models and how they can help us identify, you know, content that breaks our community guidelines or things that we are not, you know, not permissible due to laws in local countries. And so we're still sort of experimenting with this. It's such a new area, as we've all been hearing today, but it's very promising.
So let's talk about AI, because you've been working with OpenAI, and I'm so curious for your view on AI chatbots, the search wars, and Discord's role in this whole ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you know, the way we think about it is on Discord, people really are coming to us because they want to spend quality time with other folks, you know, or explore their passions and talk to people. And so I think about how does AI help us help people spend time together? And that's how we kind of think about it. And so for the products that we're building, the things that we think about are either ways to help people interact and have more fun together. So we're working on integrating a chatbot where you can kind of ask it questions and do things with your friends. So like I was working on a programming project, and you can ask the bot to write some code for you, and because I'm doing it in the context of a chat with my friends, they can see the output and then go, oh, that's cool, and then they can prompt the bot to sort of iterate on it, and you can work on it together. So that's kind of a really interesting thing that I think is novel.
And Midjourney is the largest community on Discord, right? Like 13 million members. Like, can you talk about that and how that could be maybe a model for future communities?
Yeah, so Midjourney is an amazing generative AI app where you can express your creativity by typing in, you know, words, and it generates images for you. And Midjourney is a really cool example of how our platform and developers that build on top of Discord are bringing AI into interesting sort of social experiences. Because, you know, many of these AI services, these generative things, they're kind of single-player tools. You're using them by yourself. What makes Midjourney magical is you go into this space with over 16 million people, and you can see other folks expressing their creativity and creating images and be inspired, and then people can give you feedback and you can iterate on it. And then if you love that capability, you can take the Midjourney app into your own, you know, group chat with your friends and then work on, you know, creating things with each other. And it's a really fun, collaborative way to explore AI. And so I love that people are building lots of these kind of multiplayer AI experiences on Discord because of the nature of our product.
Now, I believe the first time we talked was around when Bloomberg reported that Microsoft tried to buy Discord for $10 billion, which didn't happen then. But let's talk about the business. Like, how is the business going? How are you making money?
Yes, wonderfully. So you know, I mentioned that we don't really think of ourselves as social media, and a big part of that is our business model. You know, we sell a subscription service that our end users can choose to purchase if they love our product. So it's called Discord Nitro. We have a $10 a month plan, which is for our power users. It gives you, you know, HD streaming, so when you're playing games, you can see them in 4K, or you can send animated emojis, so you can make inside jokes with your friends that are really fun. And then we have kind of a $3 plan called Nitro Basic that gives you sort of a trimmed down access to some of those capabilities. And we're exploring other sort of price points and packaging that we can continue to deliver value to different portions of our user base.
Can you give us an idea how fast it's growing?
No, but what I can tell you is that we're very, very, very happy with it. And I really love, and I want to reiterate this, I think it's something very special about how we run Discord, is that because we make money by selling something to our users, the whole company wakes up every day thinking, how do we delight our customers and make better products for them? You know, we don't sell ads, and so I love that we're just totally focused on making an amazing experience for people.
So would you be open to a sale, or do you want to go public? What is the plan?
We're having a lot of fun right now, getting to create these amazing products for people, and so that's really what we're focused on.
Talk a little bit about creators, because I know you've been adding tools for creators, and there's a lot of competition in the creator community for their attention, right? And for their time and effort. And what is the value proposition on Discord versus elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, Discord is the place where you can bring your superfans together and create a community around whatever your passion or hobby is. And this is another one of those things that happened kind of by accident as we built the product. But what we find is that creators and even businesses to some extent love to create these spaces where they can bring their most loyal, engaged folks together. And we're exploring how we can help them make money on our platform in addition to whatever they might be doing anywhere else.
So I believe there's maybe more than a few people who left Twitter and are now working at Discord. Is that true?
We see a lot of people joining Discord from Twitter, but also from other services. We're quite different from Twitter.
I know you're very different from Twitter, but I guess back to my the question that I opened with is, I feel like what's happening with Twitter is sort of a broader, tells a broader story of, dislocation in the, I know you're not social media, in the landscape of apps that are, taking up our time. Do you see an opportunity there for Discord?
I mean, the opportunity that I see is that, people at the end of the day, I think everyone would resonate that like a big part of what makes being alive fun is having relationships with other people and spending time with them and talking with people you care about and hanging out. And so much of what the internet has brought us is it's allowed us to close these gaps and do that in amazing ways, but it's also created a lot of other distractions for our time and attention that maybe aren't as fulfilling at the end of the day. And so the opportunity that I really see is harnessing the internet, this amazing, generational technology that we have, and using it to help people find a deeper sense of belonging and connection with the people they care about.
Most importantly, are you interested in a cage match with Elon Musk?
Maybe Fortnite, see him on the island, but not.
All right, it's a date. Jason Citron, everyone. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Mayor of the City and County of San Francisco, London Breed, with Bloomberg's Karen Breslau.
Have a seat. How you doing, Mayor?
I'm doing all right.
Okay.
Good to see all these people here in San Francisco.
I seem to want to have a word with you.
All right.
Okay, let's do it. So, everybody in this room knows what this city is facing. So do you. Empty offices, cratering commercial real estate, budget deficit that takes up a good part of many of your days, a fentanyl epidemic, and that's just a Thursday, right? So, I want to start with how you feel about the way this city's woes are being portrayed and politicized.
Well, I think like any major city, San Francisco has challenges. And in fact, the issues around opioids have done something to our city and to other major cities like something I've never seen before. I was born and raised in San Francisco, and I grew up in public housing during the crack epidemic. And poverty, violence, hopelessness, despair. I mean, I lived in it differently, and the frustration that I have now as mayor of the city is how, really now everything is on video. Back then, this stuff that would happen wasn't seen by other people unless you were in it. And now it's being circulated, these moments in times where these incidents occur, which are pretty sometimes terrible incidents, are being circulated, and people are choosing to jump on a bandwagon and be critical of what's happening in San Francisco without, in some cases, living in San Francisco, walking the streets of San Francisco, and understanding what this city really is about. Yes, we have problems. Yes, there are certain parts of the city, including the Tenderloin and the South of Market, that continue to struggle and continue to be very frustrating to deal with. But ultimately, it is important for us, especially people who are part of the fabric of San Francisco, to be a part of the solution, not just point at our leaders and policymakers to say, we want you to do something. Well, what can we do? What can we do with technology? What can we do to advance ideas? It's easy to point the finger and criticize. It's hard to roll up your sleeves and to get down into the weeds of doing the work to transform San Francisco.
Okay, so we're going to talk about that in a second. You mentioned video, And I think it's interesting that, San Francisco's business is everybody's business now, right? You know that. And
Everybody's in our business.
Everybody is in your business. So I want to just take let's just take a quick look at this ad, which just dropped this week.
We don't need to look at that ad and give him any attention.
Let's look. Let's have a look.
We're here in the once great city of San Francisco. We came in here and we saw people defecating on the street. We saw people using heroin. We saw people smoking crack cocaine. And you look around, the city is not vibrant anymore. It's really collapsed because of leftist policies.
Okay, so you get the idea. So we're going to see a lot of those, and we already have. San Francisco is a character. Everybody's got an opinion, right? So Indianapolis has the same population as San Francisco, but not everybody or maybe a few more people.
Well,
right?
shoot, Miami has issues too, but
okay, but let's not do what about. Let's talk about San Francisco. Let's talk about San Francisco. Some of that is true. What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are and let me just talk about some of the more recent policies that we've been implementing in our city. San Francisco has always been known as a place that people come, a beacon of hope, innovative, transformative. Folks came here to make money during the gold rush, the dot-com boom, and now everything that's happening around artificial intelligence. But at the same time, because we're a major city, drugs has been a part of it, whether it was heroin, whether it was crack, and now, unfortunately, opioids, in particular fentanyl, in a whole nother way. And what we found with some of our recent arrests, because we have now, instead of just arresting the dealers, we're arresting people who are publicly intoxicated in particular areas. And that has amounted to about 62 arrests, and 28% of those people had outstanding warrants, and only 8% of those people were actually San Franciscans. And we're finding people are coming here for so many different reasons, including the ease of access of getting these drugs. And the reason why it's important to start to dig deep and understand the challenges is to focus on the solutions, not just the doom and gloom that everyone's talking about, but how do we get these people into treatment, whether they volunteer for treatment or we are able to force them into treatment? How do we hold people accountable for breaking the law in ways that are killing people? Because the fact is, we're seeing more overdose deaths from opioids than we did during the height of the pandemic. And so this needs to be approached not just from a localized level, but from a state and a federal level. Our governors provided us with some additional resources. Recently, the California Highway Patrol, that's been here for less than 2 months, have confiscated enough opioids, fentanyl in particular, to kill 2.1 million people. And that's just with the CHP, the California Highway Patrol, and the work that they have been doing to assist us. And in fact, the Drug Enforcement Agency, the DEA, as well as the U.S. Attorney Office on the federal level, they all are now getting involved in this because San Francisco, we have a shortage of police officers. We have challenges with enforcing the law. We don't have the capacity completely locally to address the number of challenges that exist here. And I think that in the next couple of months, as we get these additional resources, increase our capacity, start to hold people accountable, we're going to see some real change.
I'm curious, how many people have had an uncomfortable or frightening experience on the streets of San Francisco? Okay. How many people have had a car broken into? Okay. All right. So I think this tracks pretty well with the, I'm guessing about 40%. Those are horrifying numbers.
They are.
And the buck stops with you, right?
Yeah.
You didn't cause it. San Francisco's not the only city. But people are looking to you to fix it. And so what do you need? You have a $780 million deficit in this city. Problems galore. You just talked about some of them. what do you need to fix it?
I think part of what we need to fix is the issues around accountability related to people who break the law. And in fact, we have a really great DA. I'm really excited about working with her because a couple of things. Number one, previous DA was sending drug dealers to community drug court when they should be going through a different process. Now we're sending drug users to community drug court as a way to get people into treatment. There was basically one person who was prosecuting drug cases in her office. There are now 4 people that are focused on this work necessary to deal with this particular issue. And in fact, many of those various ranks around car break-ins, a lot of arrests, what gets talked about is the problems and what happens. What doesn't get talked about are when we make the arrest, when the DA also presses charges, and when we sometimes go before some of these judges who are releasing people, in some cases, for the wrong reasons. So the buck may stop with me, but at the end of the day, there are a lot of different layers that prevent me as a mayor from doing this job like a CEO, to be able to make the kinds of decisions necessary to even hire and fire my own police chief, or hire and fire department heads who oversee the work that we need to do in San Francisco. And then secondly, making sure that we are electing the kinds of people who believe in fairness, who believe in balance, who believe in transparency. And in fact, the biggest challenge that we're facing right now, 2 people who went through a whole process around drug dealing, evidence. The courts went through a case, they had a trial, the whole 9, and because of an alleged trafficking issue, they were let out even though they broke the law. It shouldn't matter. And I think part of the problem is we've made it too convenient for people to come in places like San Francisco and do whatever they want to do and get away with it. And we have to get back to some basics. Okay. I believe in second chances. I believe in alternatives to policing, which we've invested in. I believe in trying to get people on the right path. But for someone to cycle over and over and over and over through our court system and continue to be released, that is a broken system that needs to be addressed.
And as mayor, what will you do?
Part of what I can do is to bring attention to it, to try and get other people to run for judge, to make sure that, I'm supporting the district attorney and their budget and the request they made. I was able to add 3 additional prosecutors to her budget in order to make sure she had the resources and capacity to deal with these problems. So everything that I am able to do, including increasing the police's budget. We are now in San Francisco the highest paid in the Bay Area. We weren't at one point. Retention bonuses and other things. So a lot of my ability comes from the budget, the allocation of resources, and in some cases the changes to policies, but not all.
All right, and you're down 500 police officers.
It's it's about 541.
Do police officers want to come work in San Francisco?
That has been a very difficult issue. More recently, yes. Previously, probably not. In this most recent academy class, we expect to have over 30 people, up from the last academy class where we had about 10. So I think the numbers are rising, the number of applications after some of the work we've been doing to help with our relationship with law enforcement has really taken shape and have made us a more attractive destination. So I think we're gradually coming out of that.
I'd like to talk a little bit about we know what people want from you. They want a city that's safe, that's clean, that's vibrant. They don't have one. Maybe it's vibrant, but I think any of us would be hard pressed to say the city feels safe and clean or is safe and clean right now. A lot of progressives.
Well, let's talk about that.
Let's do.
Let's talk about that. You say safe and clean, and I guess the question is, do you live in San Francisco?
I do not.
And the question I have for San Franciscans mostly, and the various neighborhoods they live in, how do they feel? Because I'm out in the neighborhoods and I'm having conversations. Now, I'm gonna be honest, the Tenderloin is challenging, but I still walk in the Tenderloin because I want to see what's going on. I want to have those conversations with the people who live there. The Soma area is very challenging. And when I go to places in other neighborhoods, including the Bayview Hunters Point community, which I was just on 3rd and Newcomb today, which used to be a very notorious block of this community, it's a whole nother place. And so I think San Francisco is, you know, it's a small city, but it's a big city, and it has a lot of different pockets. So I think to imply that the city as a whole is unsafe and not clean is not fair.
Okay, fair enough.
But I do think,
Fair enough.
I do think that the problems that exist in the places that they exist are extremely problematic.
Okay.
Extremely problematic.
I'd like to talk about downtown and this, you know, this notion that you have certainly seen. I mean, every day you hear about a big company or a hotel walking away, right? Westfield Mall was the latest. The narrative is more companies flee, people leave the city, fewer people go downtown. That puts more pressure on the remaining businesses. And is this how you see the doom loop? And is San Francisco in one?
I'm glad you asked that
on.
question. How many of you have been in Nordstrom's, the store Nordstrom's at the Westfield Shopping Center in the last 6 months? Okay, a few people.
I'm going to say like maybe under 10%. So for folks not in San Francisco, the Westfield Mall
and the reason
is closing.
And the reason why I asked, I mean, how many of you shop at stores anymore? How many go into malls and stores?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a few people.
About a quarter.
And before the pandemic, how people shop has changed and continues to change and will continue to change. And I think that we can't completely rely on retail and downtown and restricting what happens downtown anymore. What we have done in some legislative changes that I've made is open the door to do more than just retail, because San Francisco has never had to work hard for tourists, for visitors, for people who want to shop here. So there have been a lot of limits placed on what people can do in certain pockets of the city. And policies that I've implemented have changed that. So now you can convert some office to housing a lot easier. You can convert certain spaces like a Westfield Mall could become, you know, something completely different than what it currently is. It could be a place where we can even tear down the whole building and build a whole new soccer stadium. We can create lab space or look at it as, you know, a new company in some other capacity. I mean, I know Brian Chesky is coming up here from Airbnb. He took the old design center where a lot of jewelry was sold. It was a whole nother use, and created his whole headquarters at the Showplace Square. So I think we have to start reimagining what downtown can be, rather than, you know, what people are saying, oh, this store is going away, that store is going away, this is no longer. Well, no one's talking about the fact that luxury brands are expanding. Yves Saint Laurent and Chanel and all these companies are expanding. So let's look at what's possible, rather than dwelling on the stories of another store that there are a lot of people who may not even shop in those places.
Okay, so reimagining. Brian Chesky is next on this stage.
Yeah.
What do you want from the leader of Airbnb, from Mark Benioff, whose giant Salesforce tower is very empty? What do you want from these people whose tremendous wealth was generated in this city? What do you want to see?
So part of what I want to see are people who are committed to San Francisco and doing a couple of things. Look, we know that before the pandemic, people were standing in line waiting. San Francisco has a cap on the amount of square footage that can be allocated for office space. People were waiting in line for it, and now it's changed and it's shifted. So we need to shift.
Yeah, 30% vacancy.
And part of what I want people to do is start being even more creative than they have, and thinking about the possibility to utilize space in all parts of San Francisco differently. That's number one. Would I like for everyone to come back to the office 5 days a week? Of course I would. But is that going to happen? Probably not. So let's make some adjustments to do everything we can to reimagine what parts of San Francisco can be and how we can recommit ourselves to, making sure that not only our companies grow and thrive in this city, but how do we get other companies interested to be a part of San Francisco? How do we make it more vibrant? It's not just about the companies and the businesses, it's also about the universities and the institutions. The reason why people want to be here is because of the talent. So places like UC Berkeley, Stanford, UCSF, it's how do we invest in our educational institutions and make sure that they are also a part of what is happening to change the world from here with all of these new and latest technologies. What I want from them is to continue to invest in San Francisco and also to collaborate. We have an Office of Innovation where, and in fact, we received a grant from Bloomberg where it's a collaboration between using all this new technology and everything that you all are doing to make it a part of what we do in San Francisco. I mean, this is like...
Could you be specific? Like, what would you like the people in this room to do? If they want to commit to San Francisco, obviously we have people who believe deeply in this city, and I can tell from the reaction. What do you want these people... how do you want people to engage and give back?
So if people have great ideas, for example, we create apps for everything. Creating apps for something that's going to help us track something. I mean, we're doing the work right now to try and figure out where the needs are, to understand how we can be more efficient. Like, for example, our shelter system. We are working on a way to deal with accountability for the dollars we spend, but also how we use even something as simple as an app to identify a specific location of where we can place people. Just like you can go on some hotel app and find a hotel room, we want to be able to do that to try and get people off the streets into shelter in a more efficient way.
Audience, Mayor, we're almost out of time.
Oh, I see that.
Yeah. So there are a lot of upset people in this city, and you have effectively directed the anger in the system to the previous, the recall of the previous DA, who you mentioned, to members of the San Francisco School Board. People are now upset with you. So a recent poll found that 22% of voters said you deserve to be reelected if the election were today. How do you want people to evaluate your tenure when they decide whether to reelect you next year?
Well, for me, to be clear, I'm not doing this job in fear of losing it. I'm doing the best I can because I've been here all my life and I know that we have problems. And I know we have problems, and I'm willing to put it all on the line and do whatever it takes and take the chances in order to get things done in this city and to turn things around. And at the end of the day, I'm going to keep working my butt off to take care of the city and to make transformative change. And the voters have the right to decide who they want to choose to be their mayor, whether it's me or anyone else. Because no matter if I'm mayor, or if I'm a citizen working in any other industry, I'm still gonna be here, and I'm still gonna be working hard for this city. And my hope is that it's not just about the leaders or the people in charge, it's also about the relationships and the partnerships, and don't just make money from San Francisco, be a part of the solution and give back to San Francisco in some sort of way. And I wanna also end by saying this, the new CEO for Deloitte, who talked about the city's model, is, you see it on our city seal. It's gold in peace, iron in war. And every time there's gold and there's money to be made in San Francisco, here comes the rush. Here comes everyone making their money. But then during the difficult and war times, people are, rushing off and leaving and talking mess and running off someplace else to spend their money. And what I'm saying to people is make your money here, but also be a part of the fabric of what makes San Francisco great. Invest in San Francisco, be involved in San Francisco, because this is not just my city, this is your city too. And together, I know we can do great things.
Mayor London Breed, thank you.
You lived around the world in Airbnbs, you've interacted with so many cities and people in different countries, and Many of them welcomed Airbnb with open arms, and some are still resisting.
Yep.
Why do you think that is?
So every city's a community, and every community has many different stakeholders, and they have many different circumstances. Some cities need more tourism. Other cities have been going through a housing affordability crisis. There's no one size fits all. You have to treat every city personally, try to make a system for them that works.
People think Airbnb is driving up costs, enriching landlords. What do you say to the people who are like, I hate what this is doing in my community?
Well, I never want Airbnb to do anything other than strengthen a community. I also think it's really important to never presume that we're the good guys. Is what we're doing like good for the world, and to constantly reevaluate. And so, for example, affordable housing. A lot of cities said, you know, we want to have some basic restrictions on how Airbnb can be used in our city. So we have we comply with registration systems for cities. We want to make sure that cities say they want to be able to, that we have to collect our fair share of taxes. But I also want people to know that we want to strengthen communities. And if that means that they need to change the way Airbnb exists in their city, we'll have that conversation.
Are you long SF, San Francisco?
I think I am ultimately. I think the city, my God, has had its fair share of challenges. I'm saddened that the tech community and the city haven't worked better together. That being said, the city is so resilient.
Yeah.
And just when people said there was going to be a massive exodus, there is a new kind of, probably the word revolution is not an understatement to say what's going to happen on AI, and a lot of it's happening right here.
Please welcome to the stage Airbnb co-founder and CEO Brian Chesky with Bloomberg's Brad Stone.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, Brad. How you doing?
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
Well, let's take advantage of the fact that the mayor was just on stage and that clip to talk about our lovely embattled city. I think you're probably like me. We cringe a little bit when the city's problems are magnified and politicized. So what do you think your responsibility is, and the responsibility of tech leaders, to help get this city back on its feet?
I think I owe a lot to the city of San Francisco personally. You know, my story, I came here in 2007 with nothing, $1,000 at the bank. And this community welcomed me with open arms. I do not think Airbnb could have been started in any city but San Francisco, at least back then. I do believe now you can kind of probably start a tech company anywhere, but I think there's something incredibly special about the community here, and notwithstanding the fact that it's kind of a bit of a punching bag around the world in the media, there is still a huge, robust tech community here, and I think AI is creating a second wave of interest. I think generally, the number one thing I've learned with cities is not to presume what I can do for a city, not to proactively share ideas, but ask a single question: how can I help? And that's what we try to do in cities around the world. I was backstage with the mayor, and that's what I asked her. I said, how could I help? And I hope to talk more with her about how we can be helpful.
Yeah, she asked to get on your schedule.
Yes,
well,
so we're happy to help.
I mean, you guys sort of famously have a perpetual work from anywhere policy.
Yes.
I mean, let's start there. Doesn't that hurt the city? You kind of rob some of the economic vitality, some of the foot traffic. You end up magnifying some of the problems of homelessness.
Yeah.
When does the responsibility to your hometown maybe sort of counterbalance some of the flexibility you want to give your employees?
I think it's a great question. You always got to balance your different stakeholders. But we didn't say, don't live in San Francisco. We just said you can be flexible. Here's the interesting thing. A large percent of people have still chosen to be in San Francisco. And I still go to San Francisco office every single week. And I think since the pandemic, it's a different game now. I think that people now have a choice of where to live. And the moment somebody has a choice, then suddenly as a city, you're a little bit more in the customer service business. And so people start to ask, well, what kind of service am I getting? And so I would love to be able to helpful with the city of San Francisco to think, how can we continue to be able to serve the businesses, and in turn, the business can help serve the city. But we are really still rooted here, and I think that there's still gonna be a huge boom coming to San Francisco.
Okay. Now, maybe the mayor's still listening backstage. What would you like to see from her and her administration in terms of addressing some of the very visible problems here?
Well, I think that I'll just start with this first thing. I think that there could be a closer relationship between the city of San Francisco and the tech and business community. And that doesn't just include the mayor, that also includes the board of supervisors and other key stakeholders. And I think that's a two-way street. I think it's on us in the tech and business community, and I think it's on government that we need to be reaching more across the aisle. And I think if we have more dialogue and a little less ideology, we're gonna actually start to solve problems. So I can make a list of all the ways San Francisco can be better, like we could do every city. But you have to start with where does it start? Everything starts with cooperation. And if we're battled in these ideological kind of narratives, we're not going to be working together. So we need to get to the table and all start working together. That's what we should do.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely is a little bit of an anti-business bent in some of the ideological corners of city government.
I think that, you know me very well. I used to think that, like, you should stay away from government officials, and people don't like you, you should avoid them. And I thought growing up, if somebody's going to cause trouble, stay away from them. And I hired an executive very early that Belinda Johnson, and she was our original general counsel, and she said something to me that was counterintuitive. She said, if people don't like you or they have concerns, you should meet them. And I said, why would I do that? She said, because it's hard to hate someone up close. And when you meet them, you understand their issues, they understand your issues. And I found that in every 100 meetings I have, 99 of the meetings, they hate us a little bit less, we're a little bit closer together. And I think a little bit more cooperation, a little less arguing, is what we need in the world right now, especially in the city of San Francisco. We need to work together. Government is not going to fix the problems. Business is not going to fix the problems. We're going to have to work together, and that starts with dialogue, and there's probably not enough of it.
Karen asked the mayor what she wanted to see from some of the stakeholders in the city, and she said sort of help. Well, we were having a little trouble hearing backstage. I think she said help reimagining, reconceptualizing some of the spaces in the city, particularly downtown.
Yes.
You're a design guy, right? You have a
Yes.
graduate degree, so help us reimagine the financial district, Westfield Mall.
Yes.
I mean, I'm putting you on the spot here, but how can some of these urban areas, office areas, do you think be reutilized?
I think that out of crisis is opportunity, and when somebody moves out, somebody can move in. I think that there could be a potentially massive opportunity to rezone commercial spaces to be residential or mixed use. We have a long history in cities of dividing up zoning. This is a commercial district. This is a retail district. This is a residential district. And I think a very vibrant community is a multi-zone community. So it's not like quiet during the day or quiet at night, or this is where people live and this is where people work. And actually, these high-rise towers are better for living than working. And the reason why is a lot of people today want to live in open floor plans. Open floor plans are not small footprints. But when people live in a space, they want a window view. And a small, tall floor plan like a tower is great for housing. So I think if we made rezoning a little bit easier and really created incentives for people, that could be really interesting. I also think we're going to have a revolution around community spaces. More and more people are working remotely. They're not going to physical office. The mall is now Amazon. The theater is now Netflix. The grocery store for many people is now Instacart. And so many of these community spaces don't exist anymore. The bowling alley, the church. And so how do people gather in the future? We used to gather to shop. We'd walk in a mall. I think now, fundamentally, we don't need to go to a physical mall to buy things. Amazon is really good at that. But we still need community. We're probably living in the loneliest time in human history. And I think one of the problems in San Francisco and cities all over the world is we need to rebuild physical community. We need to be physically together. So I would say 3 things. 1, try to turn more commercial into residential. 2, try to do more rezoning where you do multi-use. And 3, build community spaces. Could be co-working, it could be experiential spaces. We could go down the list of things you could do.
Okay, let's change gears a little bit. We are both veterans of a couple of cycles here in Silicon Valley, booms and busts. How are you viewing this 6-month-old explosion of interest and investment around AI?
Yeah, I came to Silicon Valley in late 2007. So I came at the rise of maybe 3 trends. The internet basically going global, mobile, and cloud. And those 3 trends did 3 things. Number 1, it meant your user base wasn't a US user base, it was global. As you know, covering Amazon, the cost to start a company went down precipitously with AWS, and mobile meant you just had this distribution where you could be at people's fingertips every single hour of every day. I was in high school when the internet was coming up. I remember in the 90s, I was in middle school, high school, and so I don't have a great frame of reference of what this is like for the internet. But this feels like bigger than the internet and the 2000 cycle combined. Some people say it's the biggest technological wave since the Industrial Revolution. And I think this is just a massive acceleration. It is the platform shift of all platform shifts. There's going to be tons of overfunding. The vast majority of companies that get funded, probably like the last cycles, will probably not exist as independent companies. They'll like morph or get sold. But I do think that it's a very exciting time. And I think we're all very interested in AI. And I think that there aren't going to be AI companies. I think AI is going to be embedded in every single thing we do.
Okay, well, it's not immediately intuitive, at least not to me, how that could impact Airbnb. So tell me, how is it meaningful for you guys?
Yeah, so here's our mental model. So here's how I think about it. Think of it, let's use some physical metaphors. So we have these large language models. I know Sam was here this morning, and they do this large base foundational language models. And that is kind of like infrastructure, and we're not an infrastructure company. So if we're using a physical metaphor, that's like building a bridge. We don't build bridges, we don't do infrastructure. On top of the bridge, you have cars, which you might call applications, and that's what we do. Our real strength is we're really good at like design, interface, marketing, services, understanding how to apply technology. And so I'll give you a frame of reference. Let's say we go on ChatGPT, and you ask ChatGPT a question, and I ask ChatGPT a question. We're probably going to get the same answer, or an almost identical answer. And that's great for questions like, what were the primary causes of the French Revolution, or like how far is the Earth to the moon, like kind of immutable answers. It turns out there's a whole bunch of questions where the answer depends on who you are. What should I wear? Who should I meet? Where should I go? What should I do with my life? Where should I travel? And so I think that our opportunity is to build one of the definitive AI interface layers, and it's all built around personalization. So instead of Airbnb just asking you where are you going and when are you going, we ask you some bigger questions like, well, who are you, Brad? What do you want, like today, tomorrow, next year in your life? And the better we can understand you, the more we can be like the ultimate AI concierge, pointing you to places, community, homes, experiences, and many more things. The only other thing I'll just say about AI, and I'll just bring this back to something that I've been thinking about, I'm excited and concerned about. AI obviously brings a huge amount of opportunity. I think it's going to be a massive boon for so many people. There's a couple ways to think about it. Number one, if the cost to start a company is lower, I think you're going to have millions more entrepreneurs. So I think the number one thing you're going to see from AI is more entrepreneurs. The second thing you're going to see from AI is more software. Almost every single thing around us could one day have software, because the biggest inhibitor as a designer, the biggest inhibitor I have is that not everyone speaks a computer programming language. But the moment AI can basically write that language, it can be that translator. You can prompt it. Suddenly, anyone can create software. Anyone can basically build a company. And so many more things are going to be alive. They're going to be, I don't want to say sentient, but they're going to be able to take commands and do things. So that is going to be a huge boon. I think it's easier to imagine the jobs that will be displaced than the jobs that will be created. I think that science will be revolutionized. Obviously, everyone can have a tutor. But I think there's so many more things we can do. We talk a lot about the risk to AI, and obviously there's job displacement. I actually think ultimately it's going to create a lot more jobs and destroy. I think the biggest two risks to AI that we're not talking about are, number one, just the speed. It's not that technology is a good or bad thing. Nuclear power can light up a city or destroy a city. It's how we use the technology. And the thing I'm a little concerned about is how fast it's happening, and are we going to be able to bring society along on that change? We are accelerating a lot of trends. And one of the trends that we're accelerating is people are lonelier than they've ever been before. And we can debate what the causes of this are, but it's indisputable that
I think AI is accelerating that problem?
I think AI is going to accelerate everything. And so whatever road we're going down, AI is going to accelerate that road. It might change the course a little bit, but it's not going to be a reverse on the highway. It's going to be a super highway towards where we're going. And so I think we have to ask ourselves, are we happy with the road we're going down? Because we're about to accelerate that road. And if we want to maybe make some course correction, now is the time to do it. And this is why I think discussion shouldn't just be about AI, but should be about what kind of world do we want to live in and what do we want to do with this technology. And I think fundamentally, we need to make sure that AI can deeply understand you, know you, but it should not be your main friend.
Okay. I mean, that is a lot to digest. And not to be provincial here, but to bring it back to Airbnb, like your endemic challenge is always convincing the world, Wall Street, that you guys are a tech company and not a travel company. So what, in this blossoming of entrepreneurship and AI tools, what is Airbnb's advantage?
Well, I mean, I think that, there's a handful of them. Number one, at the end of the day, people still want to have great homes, great experiences. The vast majority of our hosts only list on Airbnb. We have a custom-built tools just for them. I think AI allows us eventually to have the equivalent of like an AI coach to help you become an even better host. I think additionally, to our incredibly strong network effect, we have a lot of information about people. We have more than 500 million reviews that have been left on Airbnb. We know a lot about travelers. And I think instead of having a search problem like Google, we could have more of a matching problem. There is not one definitive right answer you come to Airbnb. So I think that like our innovative culture to be able to design these incredibly powerful interfaces to be able to match you to one-of-a-kind experiences, I think that's going to be our sweet spot.
During the pandemic, you had to curtail Airbnb's ambitions a little bit. You shut down some stuff like the travel excursions on trips. But it struck me watching Emily's episode of The Circuit with you, where you said you're really spending time imagining what Airbnb can be now, that next phase of growth. So, yeah, I mean, what can you tell us about that, and how integral is AI to what you're thinking about now for Airbnb's future?
I think that AI will be at the center. If you think about before the pandemic, if you think about the business, we were on like this highway called travel. We were doing all sorts of things with travel. We were doing transportation, we had a travel magazine, we had a business travel division, and then suddenly we lose 80% of our business 8 weeks. It's like we have this near business death experience, our business flashed before our eyes, and it's like you're going into a house. And the house is burning, and you can only take a couple things out of your house. And those became our priorities. And we decided to get really, really focused. But when that happened, like many of you in the pandemic, you start to ask yourself, like, well, what's important to me? And I think what we realized is what's important to us isn't per se travel. I mean, I love traveling like anyone does. And it's not even housing, it's something deeper. When Joe and I started Airbnb, and then Nate joined us a few months later, but that first weekend, October 2007, it was really about connecting with people. It was about hosting people. And I think that is something that we need now more than ever. I mean, the amount of people just in this country that don't have close friends, that are lonely, have trouble meeting each other, what that's doing to us, dividing our society, causing mental health issues. I'm not saying we're going to solve that problem, but I would like to be able to focus Airbnb more on being in the business of connecting people. And I think travel is why you do it. At home is the pretext for that. But I think that's what we're going to try to do.
Well, it's interesting because you started with home sharing, renting a room, the host is there.
Yeah.
But I had always assumed that the reason that you went more towards an emphasis on really taking over a home or a property, it's because your customers led you there. That they, that there's something maybe human nature-ish about being uncomfortable with your host down the hallway sharing a bathroom.
Yes.
So are you getting a signal from customers that they want to return to a sharing, connecting model?
It's kind of interesting, Brad. The thing is, I think it's our temptation to always gravitate towards technology. And I think technology, one of the things it does is it likes efficiency. It wants to find the fastest point between A and B. And the thing about human connection is it's inefficient. And so what technology wants to do is to take the human connection often out of something because that something can be inefficient. If you ask people, do you want to meet somebody? They say no. It's our instinct to isolate ourselves, to push people away. But you ask them after they've had that connection, are they happy? And they say, I'm so thankful for the people in my life. And one of the most important things about my life are not all the things I have, it's the relationships I have. The longest study on happiness is an 85-year-old Harvard longitudinal study. And the question was, what's the secret to happiness? They did not think they would have a definitive answer. And of course they did. The definitive answer is the secret to happiness are relationships. So it's a little bit complicated. I don't ask people what they want. I look at what they value after we give them things. And what I've seen is the most meaningful things in Airbnb, the reasons that people stick to the company. We say money and space is the hook, But the relationships, either the trips you go on with people or the people you meet, that's the hook. That's the thing that roots you in the company, and that's what we're going to be going towards.
Okay, I want to hit one more point. Hopefully this morning you all have noticed that we've aligned on a couple of themes in all our conversations. We've been talking a lot about AI, we've been talking about San Francisco, and we've also been trying to hit some of the geopolitical issues with regards to China. I know you guys closed a business in China. Was it end of 2020 or last year? Yeah. You know, the Biden administration is really pushing divestiture, particularly on AI. You know, you've got experience, probably frustrating experience, trying to start a domestic business there. From your perch, what is the right thing to do here?
In China?
Yeah.
I think I'm an optimist. I don't really want to live in a world where there's two internets. I think one of the things that has surprised me most since I started the company, I mean, people ask, what have you learned starting the company? The number one thing I've learned is not how different we are, it's how similar we are. And isn't it funny that people, the strongest opinions of other people, are the ones without passports? And as you travel the world, you start to realize we're more alike than we are different. And I think the promise of the internet was going to bring us together. And I'm generally concerned that we are now creating a divided two-world system with the internet. And so I think we have to have red lines. We have to be really thoughtful about how to come together. But I really hope that this is not an acceleration of us drifting apart. It's a way to come together. Ultimately, though, it was very hard to run a domestic business in China. We pulled out. You can still use Airbnb in China to travel around the world, and we're going to continue to support that.
Brian, our time blazed by.
Yes.
Everybody should watch Emily's episode of The Circuit with Brian. It's really amazing. Brian Chesky, thank you.
Thank you, man.
All right, I have the responsibility of sending everybody to lunch. For those of you registered for the breakout session, Lunch with Editors, staff will direct you to the breakout room. For everyone else, please make your way to the rooftop. And we'll reconvene here 1:30. We have a great afternoon agenda. Thank you.